Okay, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Hartford Selectboard on Tuesday, May 28th, 2024 at 6 p.m. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all the public bodies meeting remotely and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. One member of this public body or other staff is present at the location to ensure the public can participate if desired. Please note that while we strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it is important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice or and agenda. If a member of the public or of the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email at selectboard@hartford-vte.org. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we may continue the meeting if necessary to a time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by a roll call vote in accordance with the law. As required by the open meeting law, let's start by the meeting by taking a roll call attendance of all members participating in the meeting, and have those members attending remotely identify themselves to ensure that they can hear and be heard throughout the meeting. Lanny? Here. Sue?
Here.
Ida?
Here.
Mary?
Here.
Brandon?
I am here remotely via Zoom.
Okay, you can hear us?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, thank you. Kim?
I hear.
And I am here as well. Okay. So our next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would anyone like to lead us this evening?
I'd be happy to.
Okay, great.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lanny.
Thank you for the pleasure.
Okay, we're going to end this portion of the select board meeting and open up as the local liquor control board. We have two items tonight to consider, both renewals. So the first is the renewal of Roost Brewery. And that's a license of the first class and outside consumption. Any discussion? Take a motion. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry. I move that the select board approve the renewal of the first class and outside consumption licenses for River Roost Brewery LLC, doing business as River Roost, 230 South Main Street, White River Junction, Vermont, 05001.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Sue. Okay, any discussion on this one? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. All right. Our next one is the renewal of Maple Street Catering, doing business as Big Fatty's Barbecue. This is for a license of the first class, third class, and outside consumption. Any discussion on this one? Not, I will entertain a motion. Lynn?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion, we renew Maple Street Catering doing business as Big Fatty's Barbecue, 186 South Main Street, River Junction, Vermont, 05001 for first class, third class, outside consumption.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Sue. Any discussion on this one? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Brandon?
Okay. All right, so that concludes our business as the local liquor control board. We will reopen as the select board. We have no cannabis control items this evening. Order and agenda only changed. The Sister Cities report has been rescheduled to an upcoming meeting, so we won't hear that tonight. All right, so we'll go to public comment. We'll start with people in the room, and then we will hear from people on Zoom. If you'd like to speak, please come up to the microphone, identify yourself and your town or village of residence. If there's an item on the agenda you'd like to speak about, please wait till we get to that item before commenting on that particular item. Otherwise, please address the select board as a whole, not the individual members, and refrain from personal attacks. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Briggs.
Evening, David Briggs, White River Junction. Before I start, I'd like to say how pleased I was with the community event we all shared on Railroad Road yesterday at Veterans Park. Fabulous result led by Mary Kay Brown. And I'd like to also share with you a quirky little thing. One of the speaker, I think it was the designer of the monument, said, oh, it's nice to see recognizable names, and they included Briggs. Well, I have to say that Briggs on the monument is not my family. It's a fellow that served in World War I, and the reason my dad isn't there was because by the time he enlisted, he was a resident of Thetford. So his name was in Thetford Center, if you want to see it. But
Great, that's it.
we saw a lot of people we know on that monument. So I'm here to give you an update on the Coolidge Block project. Coolidge Block redevelopment project is a mixed-use project as well as a joint venture of a special nature. The pieces of the project engage public and private interests. On the one hand, they support the economy for all the taxpayers, and on the other hand, they provide a platform of sustainability that brings the private investment crucial to the virtuous cycle that synergizes profits and the taxes they pay. With this in mind, it's important to continue to make note of the elements of this project. It involves parking, green energy, housing, both affordable and market rate, Main Street commercial goods and services. The timing of this project is impressively appropriate, although I have been ready for it since I made an existential decision to depart from my career path to join forces with my dad and mother, who had doubled down as Main Street merchants by taking ownership of the Gates block, but no one truly wanted it. That decision was on the occasion of my 20th reunion from good old Hartford High School, which means this summer marks 40 years of envisioning and advocating for downtown White River Junction in the context of both my and my family's chosen endeavors, but also my sense of purpose and community. It's evident that downtown is a contributing district such as no other part of Hartford based on location, size, and tradition, confirming the commitment made by federal, state, and local resources, along with growing private reinvestment. This next project is finally clearly seen as the best choice made in tandem with past, present, and future aspirations. Indeed, the entire Upper Valley, which more than ever extends to as far as our project, including countless Dartmouth alumni, which is a significant aspect in growth. So that's my recap. Here's the update. The prospects for a downtown heating district as contemplated by the Hartford Energy Commission passed a critical milepost as the state of Vermont has now passed enabling legislation that would provide for the financing and access to the federal programs that have ignited developers and designers. It has been learned from the private sector that a geothermal system for White River Junction might call for as many as 50 6-inch diameter, 500-foot deep wells. It's important to know that these wells could be located on the project site and under the foundation slab. This means that project costs could be allocated to mutual needs of the parking garage, as well as the site preparation, demolition, and disposal of the existing buildings. In sum, this is an added and important enticement to the private sector component in its feasibility studies. Outreach inquiries regarding the prospects of bringing in a medical service clinic have been responded to in the affirmative, leading to more discussions, and there's more to come on that. I'm encouraged. Because I've been kicked out of a few offices. This time I wasn't. Requests for proposals are being launched to a broader cohort this week, and responses are reasonably expected within the month of June. Given the various aspects of the financing involved in the project, now call for the draft of a critical path timeline that can reveal mileposts that include planning commission processing, town of Hartford budgeting, submissions to the Northern Border Regional Commission in September of 2024 this year, as well as development of plans for a meeting district. From discussions with the town manager, I decided to reach out to Dominic Cloud of St. Albans, Vermont. From that meeting, it is realized that this project is ready for professional evaluation by a planning and project evaluation firm.
If you can sum it up quickly, I'll let you do so.
Noted in the dialogue in this project is comparable in many aspects to what has been done in St. Albans over the past 15 years. So I might add that He's been involved in guiding us here in Hartford recently, but I've been working with him for upwards of 10 years. The difference in his experience is the initiative has been via his office as city manager, whereas this project is beginning with me in the private sector. However, it is pointed out that with this project, the overlapping of private and public interest would seem to call for collaboration with no further delay. It is advised that a memorandum of understanding, an MOU between myself and the town of Hartford be drafted without delay. At the very least, for the benefit of discovering what would come next for these efforts. It is anticipated that the MOU would anticipate the commission of a first stage feasibility study that would be paid for in equal measures by each of the two parties, and suggested we, the town. The order of magnitude of the cost of the study could be between $5,000 and $15,000. So it's not a huge study, but it's that kind of money. My proposal at this time would be for the town manager to work with me to draft approaches to this suggestion from Mr. Cloud. My offer would be to pay for modest costs of preliminary consulting and legal work, and potentially more as learned from the process. This is presented under citizens' comment as a way of informing the select board of my ongoing dialogue with the town manager, progress being made as we proceed.
Thanks very much, Dave. We enjoy the regular updates. Sounds like there's a lot of progress being made. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Any other public comment in the room? Seeing none. Anyone on Zoom?
No hands up at the moment.
Okay. Well, we will end public comment and go to select board comments and announcements. Kim, do you want to say so? Yeah.
No, actually, I will just remind people that the community safety assessment survey is live and out. I just read somewhere that it closed the end of May, but I think it closes the end of June.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, and it can be found on the homepage of the Hartford Town website, hartford-vt.org. And if you just scroll to the updates, there's a link to participate in the survey to just share your thoughts about what community safety means for you in the town of Hartford.
Thanks, Kim. Brandon, any select board comment?
Okay.
Brandon?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Mary, any comments?
Yes, I also want to say, like David Briggs said, that the commemoration of the World War I and II monument and for the military members who served our town and our country was very well attended and it was very nice. However, and bear with me, I would like to just take a few minutes to be thoughtful about the divisiveness in our community as well. Bear with me while I explain narratives or stories that we tell ourselves without facts, and these are divisive. And so, as an English teacher, I'm going to give you a little background information that some of you will recognize. Many of us grew up reading a short story in the one-act play written by Vermont author Shirley Jackson called The Lottery. The people of the small agricultural community believed in a narrative where, in order to get the benefits of a great crop season, they must partake in a sacrifice, which means the stoning of an individual who chooses the lottery ticket. This is the narrative they have lived by and not questioned for years. But there are some who are starting to question the age-old tradition and the narrative. Segue to our last select board meeting, where I brought to the discussion on the light pole banner policy the opinions of 20 to 30 of my residential neighbors. Not long after this exchange, there were those here who heard a different narrative, a story that basically stated that these people, probably including me as well, were against veterans and first responders. Yet not a single person I spoke with said a negative thing about first responders or veterans. I never spoke a word against negatively about veterans or first responders, but I did voice my concerns about the divisiveness in our town. When people create their own narrative without fact, that's called a false narrative. And we hear this all the time in our newspapers, from politicians, from other people as well. At the very least, I expect that my colleagues and the public respect the diversity of opinion without resorting to a false narrative. Just a few short months ago, someone created a false narrative regarding former select board member Ally Tuffingen, passing the story that Ally's proposal to compensate those who would like to serve the town as select board members or commissions, but needed childcare or elder care, that to do so was because she was pregnant. Not only was this wrong and false, but it's an affront to her character and her hard work bringing this policy forward. At the monument commemoration, Senator Welch spoke to the fact that service members fought for their neighbors and for their towns. And yesterday he reminded us that these individuals fought for the freedoms that we all applaud. And one of those freedoms include the right to a diverse opinion. I hope we can keep that in mind as we work next week to vote on several policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Item, any select board comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
Sue, any comment?
No, thank you.
Danny, any comment?
I had the honor of representing the VFW at the World War I, World War II Memorial. It was an honor to do so. Mary, I love what you said right up until however. When we have a great thing like a monument to those who have fallen in defense of our country, there's not a however that follows it. It's a period. It's disturbing to hear you say a however. It was a great honor again, and great respect that I received from a lot of individuals there. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just gonna point out that we're gonna have a special meeting next Tuesday. Hoping it can be at 5:30 if members can make it then. So let me know if that's an issue with anyone's schedule. I am optimistic we will finalize the banner policy and adopt our rules of procedure. So that should be happening next Tuesday. All right, so we'll end select board comments and announcements. We have no appointments tonight. So John, I'll turn it over to you for the town manager's report.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. There are some of the things that you've already seen in your packet, a few additional items. Again, I'd like to congratulate the World War I and II Monument Committee for an excellent event yesterday and for all the hard work over many months that led up to that event. I have some fiscal year end activities just to highlight for the back of our minds as we go forward to the month of June. Effective July 1st, union employees will be receiving pay increases based on their union contracts, and almost all non-union employees will receive a comparable similar 4% increase consisting of a 2.5% step increase and a 1.5% COLA. These increases are already contained within the select board and voter approved budgets for 2025. Sometime in June, the select board will be presented with a fee schedule for review and approval, which will just update the fees charged for services in town by various departments. Also stay in tune because sometime in early July, we will probably need to have a special meeting to set tax rates now that the grand list is soon to be lodged, and we need to get tax bills out promptly. So stay tuned and we'll have more discussion along those lines. Thank you. I would like to say, just for charge for civics, they again speak for themselves. However, I would like to highlight the many awards and honors bestowed upon firefighters at their recent awards dinner. Particularly, I mean, I hate to single out anyone in particular. However, one stands out in the group, and that is the Firefighter of the Year award, which went to our own Fire Marshal Tom Peltier. So congratulations to Tom Peltier.
Any questions for John about the report? Okay.
Just a timing thing, so if and I realized I've been here when the fee schedule has come for us every June, and is that to go into effect as of July 1st?
Yes.
And so do the revenues reflected in the 25 budget reflect the fees that are going to be requested?
And that's what I've emphasized in the email to these department heads, that I want to see when they submit those fee proposals that in fact they generate their revenue expected and stated in their budget presentations.
Okay, so in the fall, when we're hearing the 26th budget request, it'll reflect the fee, and then will we approve it at that time, or still waiting to approve it in June?
No, I've got it tentatively scheduled for the June 25th meeting. I've given the department heads till June 10th to generate any updates on last year's fee schedule for this coming year. And the expectation would be that the board would review and hopefully approve that on January 25th and go into effect from July 1st.
Thanks.
Any other questions for John?
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John. All right, so our next item, Sister Cities is not gonna be able to report to us tonight, so we're gonna find the time to
Well, Allison is here, but Erica.
I was just gonna do a quick little, very brief summary.
That would be
But I
fine,
don't
yeah.
have to, okay. Great, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Just, Erica Schneider, the, head of the tech center may have, communicated to you. My name is Allison Litton, I live in Wilder, and I am the French teacher at Hartford High School. And, additionally, I am one of the members of the Sister City Committee, and we were unable to organize a presentation officially for our students this evening. Calendrically, it's been very challenging. They're just finishing up their licensure and that sort of thing, but I just, from an adult standpoint, just wanted to give you a little bit more information about what happened on our trip. I would like to start with our extreme appreciation to the select board and to the town of Hartford for their support in this endeavor. This was our first initial voyage for Hartford students to go to France. And we've had 3 adult exchanges in the past, and we have received 3 students from our sister city of Sinon, outside of Bordeaux in the southwest of France, to Hartford, but this was our first opportunity to send students to France post-COVID. And it was an extraordinary experience. Culturally, it was stressful for a lot of us, myself included, a fluent French speaker, and it was eye-opening. And once again, I would like to express my and the committee's deep appreciation to the select board for their financial and emotional support. We had a lot of students who were stressed and the whole sort of kit caboodle. I think the most meaningful event for me as an educator, as an American traveling to France, was watching students who had some linguistic challenges, not being able to communicate in the same language. Our cosmetology students shared their literal hands-on knowledge with students from France and sharing their ways of styling hair, and having a French student who had never been able to really do a French braid, ironically enough. And the joy of our Hartford student who shared that with her, and me being the recipient of that braid was, it may sound very insignificant, but it was not. It was, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. And so I look forward to the moment when our students can share with you their personal and individual experiences, but I could not take the chance to just say, really, truly, what an honor it was to watch our students, watch their students, and receive from our French hosts an incredible recognition of what we are offering to them and they are offering to us, and to be able to give them Hartford High School and Hartford area Career Technical Center merch, even though they didn't pay for it, swag. We had both American and French students in tears at the end of the journey. So that is, as one of the adults on the trip, I appreciate you. I appreciate the support of the town, and I truly look forward to when our students are able to share their experiences as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a hand up, okay?
Joyce, go ahead.
Joyce, are you there?
Yes, we can't hear you because they're not speaking into the mics.
Okay, we'll do our best to remedy that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks Joyce. And thank you, Allison, for
Thank you
for
from
coming
the
in.
Sister City Committee to the town of Hartford for their support. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay. So our next item, abundant sun review of welcoming and engaging survey results. I don't know, John, if we-
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to everybody. Lovely to be here. I'm Jude Smith-Kelly, and welcome to Hartford to the presentation of your 2024 Inclusion and Belonging Survey results. Before I get started, I want to thank Hartford as a town for being part of the first cohort that we ran that started at the back end of 2022. And I know it was a very moving time at that moment, and you had some challenges in terms of personnel, and so it was really delightful to have you come and be a part of the second cohort that started in January of this year, 2024. And at your request, I'm able to present to you this evening your survey results of 2024 compared to what your survey results in Hartford were in 2022, so that you can have a bird's eye view of the kind of progress that you're making, where your opportunities are for the future as well. So before I get started, I want to thank specifically Kim and Colleen and John for being part of the Welcoming and Engaging Communities program. So if you're ready, I'm going to dive in. I think I have capacity to share my screen. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Fantastic. All right, so here we go. I'm going to put my pointer on as well. Mr. Chair, can you please let me know how long I have to present so I can keep good time?
We usually look around 10 minutes.
Okay.
And then if there are questions, things like that, it can go a little long.
Fantastic. Okay, I'll just give you some highlights then. So don't be alarmed if I pass through some slides, because I'll just give you those highlights. I shared this with your team last week, so they know what we have to go through. So, okay, we had the survey open here from the 29th of January to the 16th of February. We had 132 valid responses from the town of Hartford. It gave us a response rate of 67.7%. You can see we had quite a healthy increase in the number of respondents from 2022. So that's great. In and of itself, it's showing that you have greater engagement in the process itself. So I'll just go through swiftly, and you can have this pack if you wish to have it afterwards, the results in the tables and some of the charts that give you some of the key highlights. This is overall in terms of the municipality. So we had 132 people that took the survey. Everybody told us, obviously, the municipality and the role within, and all of this demographic data that we gave people the opportunity to share with us was completely voluntary. So you can see by the percentages over here, we had a really high level of people disclosing how they self-identify. So I'll go swiftly into what is Abundant Sun's inclusion and belonging model. So we're looking at 5 things: the strength of the relationship that people have with their supervisors, the strength of the relationships with coworkers, the extent to which people feel they're treated with respect, satisfaction with culture, organizational commitment to diversity and inclusion. And this last score of organizational advocacy is the Employment Net Promoter Score, and I can explain that methodology in a moment to you. But that's asking on a scale of 0 to 10, to what extent would you say Hartford is a great place to work? And then this year, we did something new. We also asked all the municipalities that took part, to what extent would you say your municipality is also a great place to live? So we've got some comparative data into how people see you as an employer, but also as a community to live in. So here we go. The town of Hartford scores a 71.5. Now, I said 71.4. I want to be clear that this is not a percentage. Oftentimes when people are giving staff engagement surveys, it's like a percentage of people said this. The methodology that we're using, we want everyone to, if we're judging the health of an organization and its culture, when we're asking a question, we're looking to have a benchmark of everybody either agreeing or strongly agreeing with any particular question, because it's on a 5-point scale. So I'll just give a quick summary of that. If you have 100% of people saying that they agree, then the score would be 75. If you have 100% of people saying they don't agree, then your score would be 0. So when we're looking for 75, which means that we're in a position where people are either agreeing or strongly agreeing. Your score is 71.4, so it's just underneath the 75 that we're looking to achieve as well. Now you can see at the bottom below in 2022, your score was 69.7. So you've gone up 1.7 points from last year, which is a good thing. And you can see it as well where you've been moving forward. This is our median for our Vermont-based organizations. It's 76.3. So let's see what we had with Hartford. I'll be quick. I know we only have 10 minutes. But when we looked at the relationship that people have with their immediate supervisor, manager, or leader, you can see most people strongly agree, which makes it a powerful response there. A few people neutral, a couple disagree, and some strongly disagree. When we asked about relationship with coworkers or other officials or representatives or colleagues, that's really strong. So we got lots of dark green and light green, just a little bit of neutral, and some in the orange and the red, it disagree, strongly disagree. When we get into, do you feel you're treated with respect? We have a lot less strongly agree. We're seeing more agree, which is good. But you see, we've got a band of neutral that's coming in, and the disagree has actually become a little bit more in number as we go through. So that begins to shift your position, Hartford, when we're looking at the benchmarking. We also looked at satisfaction with workplace culture. So again, a little bit less on the strongly agree, still pretty strong on agree, a lot more neutral, right? We want people engaged. The whole point of having a welcoming and engaging community, right? The secret is in that second word, engaging. And if we see a lot of neutrality, then we don't have the engagement that we're looking for. There's a lot of disagree that comes into play here on this particular variable of workplace culture, and a little bit more strongly disagree. And kind of the same trend here, you know, less here with strongly agree. That's okay, but what's with this neutrality, right? How can we shift people that are coming in to the neutral band over time, right? Whatever we choose to do strategically to address this data into agree or strongly agree categories here. And how do we understand the disagree piece here so that we can at least get folks up one ladder into neutral, if not in an ideal world to agree. So here's your inclusion and belonging benchmark. And what we do is we benchmark all of our client data across 3,000 small to medium enterprises, and with the scale that we're using. So you're doing super well from a Hartford position. This is the global median score. So it's 80 and 80.5, 82.3 with supervisor and coworker relationships. Here's where you got a challenge. Treated with respect. So the global median is 75.8. Hartford's coming in at 66.1, which puts you in the bottom quartile for that particular position. So we know categorically, looking at this data, we need to get underneath this whole notion of, well, why do people feel they may not be treated with respect? What's going on there? And this is all part of the conversation that we can have going forward. Satisfaction with culture, organizational commitment to diversity and inclusion, and advocacy is all in the lower middle quartile. So again, there's some distance that we can travel upwards with all of these things. And that was the score I showed you earlier on, 71.4, which is almost a culture of acceptance. moving towards that way. Okay, let's see, where's your progress from 2022 to 2024? So the orange bits are where you were in 2022. The teal blue bits are where you are now in 2024. We can see with the relationship with supervisors, it's only gone down slightly, not a lot. Relationships with coworkers is pretty much maintained the same. But here's the good news for Hartford. Well done, everybody. So even though the respect piece is quite low now, and you can see you're in the bottom quartile, it was really not very good in 2022. You're much further to the left, much further down into that. And satisfaction with culture was really poor in 2022. And you've traveled probably the biggest distance in working on your culture over the last 18 months or so. So that's reflected in this, which is great. Commitment to DEI has gone up, advocacy has also gone up, and as has your overall score for inclusion and belonging. Now, let me just do a little bit of an explanation of the employment net promoter score. You can see here, so we would have asked the question on a scale of 0 to 10, to what extent would you say that Hartford is a great place to work? If anybody answered anything from a 0 to 6, they get put into the category of a detractor. If you give it a 7 or an 8, you're perceived as a passive. So remember, we have like a good chunk of people inside of Hartford that are passive, in neutral, sort of just coasting along. And then if you gave it a 9 or a 10, then you're categorized as a promoter. So the way that the score works, it's a really simple methodology used by Bain & Co. across the world. And what they do is they take the percentage of promoters and then they subtract the percentage of detractors from that. What are you talking about, Jude? What does that mean? It means this. So your overall score is a -17. That means to say that you don't have your major people are here. Almost half of the people that completed the survey came in as passive. And then you had over just a third that came in as detractors and just about a fifth as promoters. So what you're doing is you're taking this 20.5 and you're subtracting 37.9 from it, and you're getting a -17. So that's pretty far back to be starting, because if you're going to be best in class with an organizational culture, and this is about engagement, right? So engagement really reflects that if you have people who are engaged, you have people who are happy, they're healthy, they're providing excellent services to people, you're going to have retention, people are going to have career opportunities. You know, there's a really good amount of energy that's behind the organization to help propel people forward and also to retain people. So when we're starting at a -17, there's a lot of work to be catching up with there to understand as a place to work, what is happening at Hartford. And so, you know, it's going to be over to Kim and to John and to Colleen to continue to work together as part of this Welcoming and Engaging Communities cohort to see if we can get a fuller understanding of that and also put some good plans into place for making some improvements next time around. So you can see here, you were at a -21 in 2022. So you've actually gone up 4 points, and that's a good thing. Keep moving in that direction. And now I think that you've done such a tremendous amount of work stabilizing where you'd been quite unstable in 2022, that you would probably be able to make better progress as you're coming into the next cycle of your governance. We also asked a great place to live. That was our additional question, same methodology as to work. And we came up with a 0, flat line. Now, remember, folks, this is for a Welcoming and Engaging Communities program. And we want, if we're going to be promoting people, you need more promoters than detractors. So when it came to a place to work, you had many more detractors than promoters. When it comes to a place to live, it's kind of flatlined here. But you still see the middle band of folks in your community who responded to the questionnaire, almost 50% still at passive. So you have the exact same amount of promoters as you have detractors, which gives you a 0. So we need to get a heartbeat. We need to figure out why is that kind of flatlined there as we're going through. So let's look at it by category. Andrew, my colleague, does some really amazing statistical analysis and applies data science to all that we do. And so where you see there's a pink color here, that's where there is statistically significant differences between groups. And so here we only find differences for Hartford on culture and commitment to diversity and inclusion, and only in the category of length of service. It's the only category that sticks out as important. So you can see here, the folks who have been here for the longest are the least satisfied with the culture. And then the folks who have been here the shortest are the least satisfied with commitment to diversity and inclusion. So it's a really interesting dynamic that's there. I think that's a narrative to explore, a fascinating one at that. So that's how we're showing up. But those are the categories overall. And progress within categories. So from 2022 to 24, appointed officials have gone down 5.1 points, yet employees have gone up 6.5. So it's good that employees have moved up, right? How do we keep employees moving up? But also, what's happened with our appointed officials? Why has that gone down? What's happened inside of Hartford from then until now? We see some significance with length of service coming down. You can just see the point changes. Yeah, so it's still above the 75. The lowest pieces here are around here for length of service. That one in particular we can look at. And then what have we got here? Yeah, not much significant for gender identity and age band. I will just make explicit, although it did say prior to that, if there at any fewer than 12 people in any given demography, we don't report on anything because we do make a commitment to confidentiality and anonymity, and that might breach that. So in terms of a word cloud, we just put out there, if you could introduce steps, to improve belonging and inclusion in the municipality, what would it be and why? And biggest is here, continue with training and engagement. That's why that's as big as it is. Really running next to that is building community events and opportunities. I love doing this work because it's about community cohesion. It's not just about some of the sort of headlines that you see with diversity and inclusion, and it's definitely not driven by us by any sort of identity politics. It's how do we create engagement for everybody who's here as individuals, but also as members of certain groups within the society as well. So the concentrating on cohesion is vital, I think. And then second here, you can see there's a lot of desire to have a focus on drug addiction and homelessness as well. I think that's across the board. So these are just some of the elements that are there. A less heavy-handed approach to DEI. I find that a fascinating one. I wrote a book that was published 6 years ago called Dismantling Diversity Management, because I wrote a whole thesis on why it hasn't been as effective as it could have been, and some of the shortfalls and the pitfalls that we're experiencing. And I absolutely understand comments like that. And I do want that to be for the record, because there are a lot of times that the work that we do as Abundant Sun is misinterpreted as something other than what it actually is. So I think that it is really time to be a lot more nuanced and critical with how people are doing that kind of work. Okay, quick, let's look at your benchmarking across the other cohorts that we had here. What have you got? Oh yeah, that's just from a percentage of respondents, but most importantly, here we are down here at Hartford, you're 132 people. This is you across the board, above 75, great, but you're dipping below 75 in all the other categories. And so that's something to look at. Your overall score with your 71.4 is kind of in the middle of the road with some of the other 11 municipalities that participated in the cohort. So doing well, but definitely there's room for improvement. And here's just a little snapshot for you, Hartford down below. Place to work, you've got the -17 is there, and then the 0, and you can see where your other everybody's town and city is confidential here, but you can see where you are in relation. So you're kind of third at the bottom when it comes to places to work, as well as I think place to live there. So not the lowest, but definitely not in the middle, and definitely not the highest. And then these are just some of your highlights there. So you had 132 responses, which is great. Demographic disclosure was over 90%. Strong relationships with colleagues and supervisors. And there was an improvement on your score from 2022 to 24. You remain, when you're looking at challenges, at the bottom half of small to medium enterprises. The biggest challenge you have is the respect item in terms of being in the bottom quartile. And then almost 40% of your respondents are detractors, which puts you into a -17 for your net promoter score. Your detractors have increased since 2022. And then the living is a 0. And despite some improvements to scores since 2022, still ranks behind the majority of other cohort 2 participants in 2024. That's all from me.
Great, we'll open it up to questions if the board has any questions.
Kim, do you have a copy of this?
Yeah, Jude said she'd sent it, but I could forward it too.
When, okay, I haven't seen it yet, so.
Yeah, she just sent it to us a couple days ago. Connie and I met with her recently.
Okay, and we'll make sure everybody gets a copy that you can look at. Any questions or comments? Does seem like Hartford's made some improvement over the last 2 years since the first voluntary survey. So
One thing I might point
that's
out
good.
is to the extent that we are being compared with other towns in our cohort, we should point out that the cohort is not a representative sample of the entire state. It's arguably the collection of maybe the towns most interested in doing this kind of work and digging into it. So I think we're being compared with some pretty aware, self-selected, and engaging towns who want to do better.
Absolutely. And then there's some that are self-selecting and want to do better that aren't even performing as well as you are and actually performing significantly worse. You know what I mean? So but there are, to your point, John, absolutely. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have overall in working on this program. And to me, I know, as I mentioned, I have it's almost like an uphill, I don't want to call it a struggle, but there are a lot of people who come into the cohort with the DEI hat on, diversity, equity, inclusion hat on. And I'm hoping that John and Kim and Connie can actually share with you the content of the program that we're doing is so much more around governance and critical thinking skills and leadership and communication and how do we have healthy organizational communities that can be welcoming and engaging, that's building everybody's capacity. So John, I'm hoping that if we get to around 3 with welcoming and engaging communities, we can get some of the unusual suspects in who may not be attracted to doing this kind of work because they think that it's politically motivated DEI work, which to me is actually quite sad and tragic because that's not what I do. I want to thank our friend who represented the experience that our young people had in France recently. Yes, if you didn't know, if you go to France, there is no such thing as a French braid, as you said, and there's no such thing as French toast. Okay, that's not food that they eat. We make that up. And you can only know that if you get out of the bubble. And this work is about getting out of the bubble. And I've been on a cultural exchange program in my own life for the last 35 years of my life. And I'm having a marvelous time because this is all about reaching our own human potential and having great cultural exchange experiences where we can learn the things that we never even knew existed and expand our horizons. So again, thank you very much to the town of Hartford for being part of cohort number 2. Feel free to send
We have
people
a
to
question or comment from Ida.
sure.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for the presentation. This was wonderful. And for the folks that were involved with this work. And John, I just want to say as a survey methodologist by profession, I really love your question, pointing out that the sample this is basis of comparison to, I think it's important context as well. And along those lines, I did want to just ask another little technical question about the net promoter score. And so that was based on one question that was a 1 to 10 response scale.
Correct.
Is that right?
0 to 10.
0 to 10. And so the 7 and 8 was considered neutral.
Correct.
For that one. Okay. Okay.
And if you want, the reference to that is Bain & Co. And that's the global indicator. It's like if you've been in any kind of service industry, how happy were you with our service on a scale of 1 to 10? They're using the net promoter score methodology.
Yeah. Okay, that's just helpful to know too, because I think 7 and 10 could be seen as a pretty positive number in for some respondents as well. But I understand what you're going for with that metric. That's all.
We have a question or comment from the public. Go ahead, Dave.
Just a quick question. Is this evaluation of the town staff? I did not know what the context was here. So,
staff were included in it, yes. But so
but that was
that was I'll go back.
That was asked to evaluate their quality of work culture and then also how they feel about living in town.
Right.
But that was a denominator, right? All employees. Is who was invited?
Members of boards, commissions, and committees.
Oh, okay. So volunteers who are involved with the town as well were invited. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so if you see position there, that's how it broke down from position.
I see. Right.
Yeah.
Kim, and then
Yeah, thanks, Jude. I think I also just want to contextualize a bit too, like there was more to the cohort. The survey was a big part of it, for sure. But other things that we worked on as our home team, just some of the takeaways from the sessions that we shared together, especially a couple of ones in Montpelier, but it's this sort of ethical leadership, and ethical governance kind of leadership, like where we learned a lot about, all the different kinds of biases and things biases that I think would be very translatable, that I hope we'll get into in terms of just even those things like the different, what do you call that category of things with like the straw man and logical fallacies?
Logical fallacies, right? Absolutely. Like how do we, there are lots of beautiful things about logical, like if we don't have clear thinking, if we're building our arguments on assumptions and fallacies, then we don't have a strong ground to be working from. And so we did spend some time looking at some of the arguments that we use to defend our points or form our judgments. And it's like, well, that's just simply not going to work, right? To me, one of the biggest logical fallacies is that diversity equals race. That's got to end. That if we're building practices on that assumption, yikes, that's kind of dangerous. And we're missing the point of diversity. So yeah, things like that we had to get underneath to make sure that we're clearing the cobwebs out of the heads to be good at the governance.
Yeah, another major exercise was working on something that was deemed a wicked problem and looking at, and so John and Connie and I actually met and talked about, we chose, each municipality chose their wicked problem, and we went with the lack of trust in local government and worked on some strategies around that I think are actually pretty meaningful, we did our presentation I think that there was some other things. So the survey wasn't the entire existence of the cohort, but it was just a part of it, and it was very much acknowledged, I think, at least among ourselves, about the level of transition that many towns have experienced, but Hartford in particular, with a transition in leadership, and that these things are bound to improve with our current leadership team.
And even this narrow cohort of towns who really strive to do better are bedeviled by the same issues we have: trust, civility, participation, those kinds of issues. Everybody wants to do better.
Yeah. And I know it's time for me to disappear, but I did want to, just in closing, sort of close a loop. I want to close a loop on this one because I heard that we were starting the conversation about Memorial Day and honoring our veterans of World War I and II. Was it 1 and 2? Yeah, I was thinking. And it's really important to be honorable of everybody. And one of what I see a lot is people cherry picking what kind of diversity they're going to elevate and get behind. But ultimately, if we're doing this work, we have to elevate everybody. And our veterans are as much of a protected class under anti-discrimination law, and people in military service are, as well as our pregnant women, who I also heard didn't get a very good, so everyone's protected for good reason. How do we make sure that everybody is respected? Everybody is protected, but how do we make sure that everybody is respected?
I think there are a couple more questions or comments. Sue, let's start with you.
Thank you for taking this time with us tonight. I recently learned this saying that has kind of blown my mind inside out. It's so obvious, I think, but that if you don't know that you don't know, then you think you know.
Right.
And how many places in life that just has us stumbling. And then this is really silly, but I studied French for 8 years and I have absolutely no aptitude for language. But the thing that I remember and I loved the most was that pain perdu is French toast. It's lost That makes so much more sense of what it is. So I just.
And in England, they call it eggy bread.
That's
So,
right.
you know. But you wouldn't know unless you went there. And I thank you for that, because ultimately this is about learning. This work is about learning, and it's about understanding where our blind spots are, right? Because that I don't know what I don't know is a blind spot. And we have sometimes so much arrogance and so much hubris and so much convincing of ourselves that we've got it right when we actually don't have any information whatsoever. So, yeah.
Ida, did you have another comment or question?
Yeah, just one follow-up about maybe about where the next steps are for this work and where it's going. And, you know, when I see some of those like challenge areas that you pointed out to us, and the question around like folks concerned about a lack of respect in the workplace, and, you know, where my mind goes without after is like, oh, the next step would be maybe some in-depth interviews to understand nuances in people's experience and what's going on there. So I just wonder if that's ever part of the work that you do with Abundant Sun, and in a, you know, as a follow-on to surveys. Do you
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we work with we're in the habit of forming specific committees and groups after we get the results of surveys, and then we'll work with the leadership teams and the staff, and particularly on key areas where there are differences, to see where we have to solution together. My experience professionally is on action research, so I'm all about pulling people together to solution collectively and collaboratively, and that's the next step. And it's a joyous thing, because you then create this sort of microcosm of an organization, and that team becomes an incubator to play out some of the challenges, but with the agreements to go the distance, you know, and experience some of those bumps along the road to get to the other side. That's where the work begins, really. Yeah.
Allison, do you have
Yeah.
a question? We have a question or comment from the public. Oh, you, Allison.
Great, thank you. I don't know if any of you know this signal from, I often use it in elementary school, which is, this is I agree, without having to say, oh, me too, me too. And I literally, one of the things I wanted to mention was the Pam Perdu, the lost bread, because that is absolutely one of the things that I think comes out in this discussion. And as both a resident and an employee of the town of Hartford, this was fascinating to see and hear. And I don't want to be an armchair Monday morning football coach, but this is again fascinating as someone who works for the town and lives in the town of Hartford, to think about these concepts as educators. We work through, you know, diversity and inclusion initiatives, but to think about this on a larger scale. And this is kind of a rhetorical question, but to see the number of respondents to this survey, it was interesting for me to see that as someone who works here, but does not work under the specific town government umbrella. And so I greatly appreciate this. This is fascinating. And I do just want to underline the idea of the idea of diversity, and how oftentimes our lens can be fairly narrow with respect to that. So again, I appreciate your work. I appreciate your insight. As a language nerd, I love it. As a numbers nerd, I love it. And so I do hope that this is a first step. It's messy. It's very complicated. But it's kind of like a big old bowl of spaghetti. But when you get to the end of it, it's really good. It's good to dive in. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
It's a great pleasure.
To dig into this messiness. So thank you.
Thank you very much for the comment.
You're welcome.
Okay, any comments or questions?
I might. Oh, I was going to say I might jump in if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Oh yes, if you have a comment or question, please.
Well, I wanted to, just say thanks for all this survey work. I know it's kind of yeoman's work, and as well as Ida, I'm sure, knows this. And also just kind of echo that that I think I'm in the same place with kind of the reason for diversity, equity, and inclusion work, which is kind of the loss to all of us, you know. Like yes, it's good to make sure everyone sort of inherently to make sure everyone has a level playing field, but but also it's for like selfish reasons, right? Because I think like how many Albert Einsteins would we have had kind of had their knowledge as a part of our world today if like they had all had sort of like really great even just like food growing up or like good like primary education and like a stable household to sort of like for their intellects to grow and kind of benefit the rest of us. So that's a big reason why I do that kind of work, even in addition to the kind of the reason why it is good in and of itself.
Yeah, thank you. And to me, there's nothing, this is about connection and engagement, and how good we feel. We've just been through a horrible time with social distancing, and there's so much trauma that we've all experienced individually as families and communities. And I think that it is a really important time to find ways to come together, and to find ways to be well together and to support one another in that. So thank you, Brandon.
Well, thank you very much.
My pleasure. See you soon.
See you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, we'll move to our next item, which is the HCOREI update. Pat here to give us an update. We have two HCOREI items. The first, I believe, is the update.
That is here. Hi, I'm Pat Attilio. I am the chair of HCOREI, which stands for the Hartford Committee on Racial Equity and Inclusion. And I'd like to acknowledge that some other members of the committee came out tonight. Susan Mullins is here, and Holly Embers is here. Thanks for showing. And in addition to Mary, and so yeah, I'm here to give a couple things. One is our periodically HCOREI comes in front of the select board to give an update about what's going on with our committee. And tonight I'll be very brief in this regard. But I did want to acknowledge and kind of celebrate some successes that we're having as a committee, some long-standing things that, back when the committee was first formed, there was a commission, a study, a strategic plan was developed for the town of Hartford, for HCOREI, this group, and that was issued in March of 2020. The strategic plan was a great resource for us, and this continues to serve to inform our work and to give us direction. And we've been, as a committee, advocating for that with the school board, the select board, ever since. And in the last few months, we've had some real success here, some progress forward. And that's the main part of my update today. You see it in the packet. I pointed out the famous policy on policies, which is, it doesn't really seem like a TEI thing, but it is, it's all about getting consistency and transparency of towns' policies and ordinances so that everyone has access to them. They have all the information that we want so that we can review them with an equity lens. And so that was something that came out of the strategic plan, is something pushing forward now that John has helped the select board approval. We're starting to see, we've got a template approved for standard description, and that work's going to take some time, but that's fine. Engage with that. Along the same lines, policy digitization. So we can see a day when we don't have to even come to the super town clerk and sift through a binder to see certain what the latest ordinances are. They'll be accessible and searchable for all of us. So that, again, is underway. I know some of you know more about the particulars than I do. The community safety review, something we've been advocating for the longest time. It's another survey of the community at large to see how safe and supported and wellness support getting the community that is now underway, of course you all know. And as Kim mentioned, I think the survey is out there and it's available to the end of June for any resident of Hartford or someone who school works in Hartford to complete that survey, and it's available on the top website. So again, I want to acknowledge and celebrate that And then the communication officer position, I believe that that position's been funded on a part-time basis and the job description is out there. So that was another part of the strategic plan for HCOREI, that we need better communication for trust in the town and to get information out to everyone who needs it about what's going on. So yeah, so those are the really good news for HCOREI here. And look to the immediate future, we've got Juneteenth coming up, and this again is going to be jointly run between the town of Hartford and Lebanon. There's an event on actual Juneteenth, which happens to be a Wednesday this year, when there'll be a film shown in Lebanon, and the particulars will be coming out of that. I won't have them what the film is and the exact timing, but stay tuned for that. And then the Juneteenth event here in Lyman Park, again, some of you may know more than I do, but it's going to be the 22nd of June, which is a Saturday. And it's going to be as in past years. We're going to have interesting speakers and food, activities, and music. And so that's coming up, and Joe Major and some HCOREI members and others are working. So, so that's in the future, and we're working on. And so I'll now go on to the other part of the update I have.
Are there any questions or comments?
What's happening with HCOREI?
Just the scheduling thing. I haven't seen, maybe I just haven't looked in the right places, but I haven't seen any announcements about that June 22nd event yet. Has it been? Okay.
I think Joe is working on it.
Okay. And it's the same, I believe it's the same day as the Hartford Alumni Parade?
Yes.
Yeah, but the Juneteenth will be in the afternoon. I think the alumni parade starts at like 11
in the
or
morning,
something, and then Juneteenth, I believe, is usually like 3 to 5 o'clock thing.
Okay, great. That'll be a big day.
Yeah. Yeah, we know Joe's working on it. We'll look for further updates.
Great.
Okay.
All right. So I will move on to the other thing that we have to talk about with the select board tonight, and that is an update to our charge. Periodically, review HCOREI's charge, and we actually did an update last year, but in the committee discussions, we focused in on this particular item, which is about the makeup of the committee. So the current HCOREI charge has 11 committee members, 2 select board members, 2, these are all voting members, 2 school board members, 5 community members, and 2 Hartford High School student liaisons. And they're all discussing both at the meetings. We found in practical terms that it's very difficult to get a quorum with that many people, and it's a hardship for both the school board to contribute on a regular basis, 2 members, as well as select board for the same reason, and also the school liaison. So it's just and so it seemed like a practical matter to reduce those numbers, and also so one, we're proposing a charge change so that the committee would have 7 members, 1 select board member, 1 school board member, 1 student liaison voting member, and then to keep it an odd number for voting meetings, 5 down to 4 community members. And so that's what we're proposing to relieve the burden on the select board and school board and school students.
Pat, I'm sorry to interrupt. We're getting more reports that if people are having a hard time. Could you speak
I'm
louder?
very sorry.
Thank you.
All right, that was okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Pat, do you have full membership in the committee currently? Are all
not 11.
Okay,
No.
not 11.
If we reduce it to 7, we will.
Okay, and has the school board has to make this change as well?
Correct, and they're meeting about that either next week or last week. They're meeting about the same time to discuss the change. Tom said he put that on their agenda as well.
Okay, because do you know based on the current membership, like if this gets revised, are there gonna be people in positions that are just gonna go away? Like they'll serve the end of their term and then those will drop off? I mean, I think for the select board, it'll.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah, so currently Mary and Kim are select board
Yeah.
members.
and there'll be one community member position that drops off if it's not.
Correct, and that is now a vacant position.
Oh, that's not big. Okay, great.
And we have one school board liaison at the moment, which is Nancy.
Okay, so there's not a huge disruption. It sounds like.
Correct. And I
Okay.
think that Kim's being philosophical
I'll still go to meetings.
about it.
So there are questions for Pat about this?
Yeah, so again, make it easier to get quorum, and this is more consistent with other communities. That's, so I entertain a motion.
I think this is a topic that is gonna go back to HCOREI and come up again another time soon, but the committee is also working on requesting a staff liaison to the committee, which is also consistent with most committees, but HCOREI has not had one, so I just mention it now because it's likely to come back again within the next few meetings, so don't be surprised.
Is the request for a motion tonight to make this revision now or to wait until it comes back?
I see them as separable because
Okay.
I don't see the staff liaison as being a voting member
Mhm.
necessarily, but it still needs to work through. And this, nothing's forever, right? If we discover a lot more interest among the select board, the school board, the community for people that want to have a role and a place in the committee's activities, we can visit this again. But I think, given the current situation, given the level of participation and interest we're seeing, I think this is the right thing to do. So I'd advocate to go ahead and make this change, recognizing great change.
Sure. If anyone wants to make a motion, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I move that the select board revise the committee's charge to change the constitution to include the advisory committee to be constituted of 7 members, to include 1 select board member, 1 school board member, 4 community members, and 1 student member from Hartford High School. Each member will have equal weight in discussion and voting.
Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a second from Ida. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
And then I guess for the record, we just say that from the select board, Mary Erdig would be the sole select board liaison, and I will resign. I'm just not it.
Okay.
Thank you for your service. All right, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
Okay, our next item is a request for the use of opioid settlement funds. Emily's here. I think it was a request from Emily, same reason.
Right.
Thought we were not doing that tonight.
Well, we postponed it from a meeting ago.
Yes, and
No.
we did confirm for her for tonight, and she understands that. I thought she was hoping to be here in person, but
Are
she
we
might
ahead of
be here.
schedule maybe?
We are
ahead,
a little
yes.
bit ahead of schedule. I don't know if we want to, well, we usually take a break at 7:30. We could take a break now until 7:30 and then come back and we'll be more aligned.
We have Chris Holsworth coming in on the next item if you want to pass that over.
Okay, well, let's jump over the opioid settlement funds, hit up the landfill construction, and then we'll take our break. Hopefully right around 7:30.
Good.
Okay,
Perfect timing.
so Chris and Brian.
There's someone on Zoom as an owner. I don't know if that could be,
With their hand up.
no.
Okay.
Let's try.
Well,
Why don't we ask if they want to speak? Do we know? If
No one's got their hand up. Just
All right.
recognize you.
we'll come back. We'll turn this over to Chris and to Brian for now.
All right. So I'm assuming everyone read the memorandum. So it is a lengthy issue that's been going on for a while now.
You're probably going to hear from the audience at home that we're not speaking loud enough for these microphones, Chris.
Okay. So time has come for us. We finally found a way to clean up the C and D debris that are on site left over from 40 years of operation. Our previous reports and studies by the engineers, by the time we could fund them, the inflationary rate of the landfills outstripped the studies, and we just couldn't keep up with it. That being said, in here, the breakdown, we have sought individual firms to do this for us, help us. We have made contact with and got a estimate from Hammond's Grinding and Recycling, who is very adept to processing recycled materials. They're taking down the Linden Tap and Die factory right now and processes. So this is their specialty. It's the only one of that scale around here. They provided us a estimate of $105 per ton to process that into daily cover material. That includes trucking, remediating the site, and returning it to natural grade and restoring the site, closing it out. That is less than the disposal rate of the Lebanon landfill as garbage, which is what they wanted to take it as previously, or even a prorated rate of garbage in some C and D. So it's a good deal for us. The 105 does not include the $6 out of state tax. And then, of course, we have our engineering services testing, certifying that it's been remediated, overseeing it, cleaning the site up. It comes in for a total of those items of $440, roughly. Which puts us under the original budget. Because the pile is random, we can only dig so many holes into it. The bottom is at random elevations. It is a weight-based material. So while we did take samples, cubic yard samples, and weigh it, we can't say that it's all going to weigh uniformly. So we have a 25% contingency to cover overages. And of course, we're estimating the lead contaminated spot that's down in the bottom of the hole based on test pits. It's really hard to define that until we start testing it more as we get to it. So that's why there's not a 10, a 25% contingency. To get this methodology of getting to here, it was a little bit creative and a lot of outreach. It did not follow the typical purchasing policy of releasing it for bids. Individuals were sought based on their capabilities and connections to alternative landfills. This allows us to dispose of the material at Lebanon as daily covers, so it's a useful product for them. It's also a short trucking trip, which helps us with our sustainability clause. To truck this material all the way to Coventry for not use as daily cover, it's more expensive than this, but it's really not good for the environment. It defeats the purpose of having a transfer facility. So therefore, we're basically asking you to waive the purchasing policy based on over a year's worth of negotiating and with different vendors, and basically selecting what we believe to be the most qualified and really the only vendor that's been fruitful in working with us to process and ship this material over to Lebanon for reuse as daily cover.
Good questions, Bruce, Lane?
Just a couple questions. So am I correct in understanding that the native soil surface level is the 13 feet below grade
It varies.
level?
It's in excess of 13 feet below the grade out there. At first, we had originally had the C&D piles removed that sat on top of what was believed to be ground. When we got to that ground, the processor, a different firm than Hammond, believed that they were sitting on an old stump dump. I mean, this is dirty. It's composted into dirt, a lot of it. And so the state was like, yeah, I don't think so. So we conducted our own in-house surveys of the material, took historical topography maps, figured out like, okay, this could be up over 13 feet of material. Went out, did some of our own test bits just to confirm it. It was there. Then we hired Sanborn Head to test the material, confirm the quantities, and help us determine which way to dispose
So
of
the
it.
second question I have in regards to that then is that, has the state agreed to sign off on us if we process this to 13 feet below grade level?
The state's given us orders to bring it down to the native soil, which is what we're doing. They are going to come down. They don't approve of the plan, so to speak. They're going to come down and meet with the engineers and the contractor to go over the plan beforehand, before it kicks off. But again, they want the materials in violation. The material's not supposed to be.
I'm just
there.
concerned about the fact if we hit 13 feet, what's to stop them from saying, well, you haven't got enough? And
Well,
that's the
so
thing that
what you
worries
do
me
is you go down to the natural material, which is very evident. It does have some leaching into it, so that will get tested, and some of that material will actually be removed as well, but it's pure sand below.
That's why the contingency is much larger.
Yeah, I'd just love to have some sort of buy-in from the state that, saying that, look, you guys are doing this great faith effort to do what you're doing here. It seems like that we should have some sort of, buy-in from the state
I
saying.
asked the
after all
same
that.
question and I got the same answer, which is that the state will let us know kind of
Right.
after the fact.
Once they see it's cleaned, what they were most concerned is that it was going to be hauled by a licensed hauler for waste materials and shipped to a approved lined landfill.
But again, we don't know what we don't know because we haven't hit 13 feet.
We'll dig, Lanny, we'll keep until we get to it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
When I saw the memo from Chris, my first response was eureka.
Yeah.
But you're right. You don't know everything.
We don't know until we hit 13 feet, whether we're gonna end up, yeah, we have to go ahead with this. It's a no brainer, but.
We
I'm just
have
concerned
dug
about
the
extra
13
cost.
feet plus and found the native soil, if that's what you're asking. We've peppered this with test pits,
Yeah.
so.
I understand. I'm not blaming anything you guys. I'm just saying that I just, considering the cost and knowing what the landfill was from when I was a little feller, there's a lot of material in there, so just worried that 13 feet may not be enough. And you say 13 feet, but the 13 feet and how big of a square area?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It varies. It was a ravine-ish area. So 13 feet's in the center. So it goes 13 feet, a little over 13 feet is the maximum. And we confirmed it with test pits.
How many square feet is the actual area that the digging will be in?
Oh, it's half acre or less.
A half acre, 13 feet deep.
No, it's not all 13 feet
I
deep.
know,
It
on
varies.
average, yeah, that's.
No, that's not even average. That's the worst case.
That's just a lot of material. Wow. Good.
But you had a number
Kim?
associated with the volume, right?
By tonnage, yeah, they
Yes,
broke
what-
it down into
what was
tonnage.
that?
It's a little over 3,000 tons. So we have room for another 1,000 plus tons.
Well, I just wanted to also just express for any new board members that, like Chris said, this is like a thing that was from 40 years ago. And since I have been on the board since 2018, it's been a dilemma that every year we're like, we gotta do something about this, we gotta do something about this. So I had the same eureka, like when I read that memo, I was like, I mean, as close as we could get to it,
Right.
I was really relieved.
So the background and the reason I've been given, historical reasoning I've been given that material's there is that the removal was never funded adequately each cycle. So boom, 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 it works its way up.
More than happy to make a
Anyone
motion.
would like to make a motion?
Are these two motions?
They are.
It could be in the
I
same.
think probably the same one.
Mr. Chair, I move that the select board waive section 3.6 of the purchasing policy as allowed under section 3.7 of said policy and authorize the town manager to execute contracts with Sanborn Head for $25,900 and with Hammond Grinding and Recycling for $392,070 to facilitate the removal and cleanup of the C&D construction and demolition processing area. Further, the select board authorized the town manager to execute change orders or contract amendments in recognition of the uncertainties of the subsurface conditions and for the payment of the Vermont tax on out-of-state disposal up to the funding limit of $557,113.
Okay, we have a motion. Kim, do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second from Mary. Any discussion? Okay.
Yeah, I just had it. Had it top of my head, now I lost it.
Was it the up to thing?
No, just a second here. Oh, yes. At the conclusion of this, when you get this done then, I mean, you haven't laid out any plans for the future then, other than just clean?
We'll have a clean site for the future to redevelop it as the board sees.
We're still
fit
awaiting
for us.
Sanborn Head's feasibility study results.
But the other
in the
question,
months ahead.
I guess I had is that we don't know throughout the years if there's been pressure treated lumber in there, or if
Well,
there's been
There's
anything.
been
for-
extensive testing of the material in there. And the only thing we found so far was one spot that had some lead that is slightly above the acceptable level to go to the landfill. So if you read in there, it's going to be in situ treated on site. There's some reagents, we're not sure which ones are going to be applied to it. May also be a mix of some virgin soil to dilute it to the point where it can be disposed of as daily cutter.
And then one other question for me, sir. The funding for this, I understand that we have set aside funds for C&D or for the landfill cleanup. Do we have the funds in that fund for this cleanup? And if not, is there reserve funds to use for this, or how are we paying for
When the
this?
new budget year kicks in on July 1st, I think that
I
finishes.
think it's broken
Workflow.
down, it's all broken down over multiple
Okay, so
POs. and
we
stuff
got
like
enough
that.
funds everywhere to pay for this without, new burden on the taxpayers, further burden on the
Yeah.
taxpayers. Okay,
There's
Thank
3
you.
existing POs and
Fine.
FY.
that satisfies my question. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Yeah.
Thank
you. I usually take a break right around now, but I saw Emily showed up and don't want to make her sit around much longer. So
Especially if I'm late.
Yeah.
So we're moving right along.
we were way ahead of schedule. If you want, I don't imagine this will take too long. If you want to,
It won't, but I'm happy to let you take a break.
Let's
do it.
let's do it.
I think
We'll hear from you.
other people are okay
Yeah,
with that.
so the next item, we're going back. This is the request for use of opioid settlement funds. We have Emily here. You just wanna,
Is this where I'm standing?
that's where you're standing.
Hi. Boy. Hi, everybody. My name is Emily Zanleone. I live in the village of Wilder. If you don't know me, I run the Hartford Community Coalition. If you're not familiar with HCC, we are your community coalition focused on youth substance use, youth mental health, food insecurity in the summertime. We were started in 2013, just a little history. For those of you who don't know, in 2013, Hartford suffered 3 youth suicide deaths in the span of 4 months. A group of concerned citizens, including youth, got together and started talking about possible reasons for that and solutions. HCC became a nonprofit in 2018, and then in 2019 secured a federal drug-free communities grant. So with that funding and our many community conversations prior to that, we determined that focusing on youth substance use, misuse, and other mental health focuses, including food insecurity in the summer, were a good place for us to put our efforts. I came on as the inaugural staff member in January of 2020. And very recently, we've just done our 3-year strategic plan. So I'm just going to read our mission statement so I do not get it incorrect because it's new. The Hartford Community Coalition is a collective group of community members working to promote mental health and prevent youth substance use and summer food insecurity in support of a healthy, inclusive, vibrant, and resilient Hartford. What I am here to request is some funding from the opioid settlement funds that the town has received. I have originally been in touch with the Hypertherm's Hope Foundation. They had asked a few of us community members to do a community event in the evening, potentially at the Lebanon Opera House or Northern Stage, and bring Chris Herron to the Upper Valley. If you don't know Chris, he is a public speaker, wellness enthusiast, and has a truly devastating story that focuses on addiction and then the recovery and hope the resilience and the hope of recovery. So that community event has fallen through, but I would still very much like to bring Chris to our young people here at the high school. One of the main tenets for this funding, requirements for this funding, is that prevention certainly falls right into the categories required for this funding. Chris Herron, certainly this presentation falls very much into the prevention vein. He addresses themes of gateway drugs, prescription drug use, vaping, and the responsibility of everyone being part of the prevention, certainly for our youth, but for us all. I'm going to leave a couple of things with you. One of the things that we also do with our youth, both at the high school and at the middle school, we run what's called a Getting to Why group. So you might know that the youth every 2 years in the school system take the YRBS, that's the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. We use that data in almost all of our work. And the way that we engage our kids and our students with that work is to ask them to look at the data and do an analysis of it. This year, our high school students were extremely concerned about 49% of female students at the high school said that they've ever drank alcohol, compared to 34% of males, so that's 49, it's half of females. 10% of female students are currently engaging in binge drinking, compared to only 3% of males. And then our middle school students identified that almost a quarter of them say it's easy or very easy to get vaping devices. And that a quarter of girls and about 16% of boys report having suicidal thoughts. I think prevention and youth wellness is certainly on everybody's mind. I would like very much to bring Chris as kind of a jumping off point for our new school calendar year. What he does is he has a 5-minute movie that's shown with, and then next he just takes the microphone and he walks and talks and tells a story. And then he takes questions from the audience. What I'd like to do is bring him for a time that works for the high school for an all-school assembly sometime in the fall of 2024. Both Jeff Marino and Nelson Fogg are aware of what I'm hoping to do and will certainly help me determine a best date to have that all-school assembly. Unfortunately, getting someone like Chris Herron, who by the way is a former Celtics player, into a very small town like Hartford is pretty expensive. And so what I am asking of the town is the same as what my original request was, so I have not increased that at all. I'm asking for $5,500, and within that new grant request, There still is buy-in. The Hope Foundation is happy to still give us some funds to make up for what they might have done otherwise. And HCC will continue to fill in the rest that's needed from our funds, which are, thank you very much, town appropriated.
Okay, so the request is $5,500 to the Hartford Community Coalition from the opioid sale.
Yes, thank you.
Lanny, questions or comments?
This is without a doubt a no-brainer. This doesn't have any need for discussion. This group is paramount in getting our kids what they need for their lives here in the Upper Valley. And if anything, opioid settlement funds should go for, it's HCC, which are doing such a great job for kids in the Upper Valley. We're sitting on, $85,000 worth of money. I'm just going to make the recommendation and make a motion that we authorize $5,500, correct?
Yes.
$5,500 from the opioid settlement fund for the HCC to do this event. This should be a no-brainer.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Kim, and then we can
I-
have questions and discussion. No need to hurry it along. You can ask whatever questions you like.
Hi, it's great to meet you. My
Hi,
name's
Ida.
Ida. I really appreciate your presentation. I love the part that you're working with the YRBS data with the students and they're into it. That just like makes my heart sing. I would love to talk to you after, because if you have students who love data or might be interested in a career in public health, I would love to talk to them about that.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I mean, as a grad student, I work with this YRBS data, it was a huge part of my training. So I would love to connect with youth who are interested in that field and in prevention and mental health. In particular, I work in those areas as well.
Great.
And yeah, the one thought I had when I was looking at this is, I think I appreciate that you did tie it into the specific requirements in the grant funding. And I think, when I read the funding, it really stood out to me that they want it to be, part of a campaign and an evidence-based effort. And I see that in your application that you do say that it's going to jumpstart the evidence-based campaign. So I just, underscoring that that's an important piece of clarifying, forever audited for a while. These funds were used for this purpose. I think to make sure that it's like integrated into an ongoing effort is key to the success of the impact of this, speaker as well.
Great. Thank you, Ida. I appreciate that, kind of these big speakers that just come in and then leave, not the best evidence-based practice. So yes, it's really important that we do follow it up with pre and post his presentation, and then certainly throughout the year with our own messaging.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Mary?
Yeah. I appreciate, I really appreciate, this is a great idea. More than that, it's a project that takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. Do you have any problems with a proposal like this for buy-in from all the parents? That's, always a big thing. Someone saying, I don't want to introduce my kid to this because then it's going to be suggestive. I just want to make sure that there's total buy-in. Kids all will be going to this.
Yes, unless otherwise deemed inappropriate per their learning, maybe disability or other reason. And certainly there are others that have lost parents to addiction that may not want to sit in that room and hear a story like this. So yes, being very thoughtful about that moving forward, that if anyone chooses not to be there, that we respect that for sure, 100%. Yeah.
And then the other question I had was, this is such a sensitive area, and I know you have done marvelous things with the middle school too, but I remember when I was teaching at Hanover High School that the middle school, the close proximity, there was so much that was going on interchangeably in drugs and things with them. Obviously, for this amount of money that you're working with this individual and everything, you can't do everything, but how can you promote more middle school? Because middle school kids are really quick to try things. And I just don't know if they can't get something like this, what other alternatives are there for them?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, we have a motion on the second. Can we
Yeah, and
call
we're
it?
taking
Can we call the
questions.
question?
Comments? That's okay.
He's asking.
Call the question.
May I respond?
Yes, go ahead.
Mary, that's a really great question, and I think definitely, if I could do this with the middle school, I would. I think that we probably would have quite a bit more requests for children not to be present in the middle school. That's not to say that there aren't parents that are like, please put my child in front of someone like this. The idea never is to scare kids into not using drugs or alcohol. The idea is to empower them to make the choice themselves. The other thing that I might say to that is that if a bunch of middle school parents would like to have Chris at the middle school as well that day, there is a slight discount to get him to come for a second performance that day. And I would be happy to come back and ask for a little more of this fund. Yes, and with that, I also might say, I will be keeping an eye on how much money is still left. And if there continues to be a generous amount, I would like to come back and request some more. I will leave 2 handouts for you with that wire-based information, the current new budget, and our 3-year strategic plan, so you can see how it aligns with what we're doing.
Good to you, Sue. I just want to note also that besides being playing for the Celtics for a short time, Chris Herons and his high school basketball team are the subject of a book called Fall River Dreams that I would highly recommend to anyone who's interested. So,
Yes, thank you for doing all this. I've seen his presentation and it was hard to take as a 50-something-year-old. So I would be a little concerned about the middle school. And I totally agree with Mary and have seen evidence myself of some very difficult problems. I worked in juvenile court for many years in this town, and something for them, I think, is critical.
Yep.
But
Okay.
I would be a little concerned about Chris's presentation.
Okay, and I appreciate that and heard. So that's something that we can work on. Thank you for that suggestion.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Brandon, did you say yes?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank
We'll
you.
take our break and come back in 10 minutes. And finish up our agenda items.
Just remember the number.
Discussion of implementing the new child care payroll tax.
Yes.
John, you have a little background.
Yeah,
for
the
us on that?
legislature, of course, in their infinite wisdom, has decided that it would be a good idea to ask employers to add a 44/100% payroll tax on their payrolls to allow for funding of a child care program in Vermont. And as a result, towns and employers, frankly, all across the state have to decide how to implement that. The legislation allows an employer to have employees provide 1/4 of that amount or to pay it entirely of their own resources. I've tried to reach out to my cohorts, my colleagues around the state, to get a little bit of input about what they're doing. I guess in a very unscientific way, I could report that this relatively scant response I've had indicates that about 2/3 of the public jurisdictions dealing with this are absorbing the entire 44/100% payroll tax increase themselves, not asking employees to pay a 1/4 share of that. What that would mean is that the town would bear an annual cost of about $45,000, which in a overall budget of roughly $21 million amounts to about 0.2%. I've learned that one person in Middlebury that I know responds that he was at an HR conference recently, for what it's worth, and he says that the consensus among the public jurisdictions were that they were leaning toward absorbing the entire amount themselves. One of the reasons the board might want to consider that approach, even if it was not enough to do so for morale reasons, is that any decision is a choice. And to the extent that a town would consider making a choice to require employees to pay additional amounts of payroll tax, it could be a union issue that is raised. And one might ask oneself, is the certainty of avoiding any kind of issue along those lines worth $10,000 or $11,000? I might suggest that it is. Certainly Paula at HR has suggested that it is. Gail, I think, takes a similar view of it. So that's the option in front of you.
Okay. Any questions for John on this or discussion? Yeah.
So you answered my question that the fiscal 25 budget does not reflect any portion of the state mandated payroll tax. But I mean, is that is our oversight and not because the state
You
didn't
can
tell
use that.
towns
You
they
can
were
use that word if you choose to. We've had discussions about it. I know last fall, pretty early in the process, and for whatever reason, I can't account for how it happened, but certainly it was not included in the budget proposal. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, it's because I think
I
that
certainly plan to for the next cycle, for sure.
2023, and my guess is that maybe that the state did not promote the passing and the impact of
I
this.
wouldn't want to blame anybody, but yeah, certainly we'll be including it in the proposal for the fall, no question about it, because it's a new reality to deal with.
Right, and then the actual source of the funds for fiscal 25?
Well, as I say, I don't think it'll be a problem for us to deal with an expense amounting to about 1/5 of 1% of an overall budget.
And this wouldn't qualify into something because of the amount being like over $20,000. It's, I mean, are we approving this because?
I'm just asking for your approval simply because it's a brand new expenditure that the town will be bearing. And that I believe the select board should have a say in whether and to what extent it asks the state employees to share in that burden.
Sure. I'm personally not, I'm in support of funding it entirely, and I'm sure there are funds. I still would personally, as an individual member, like to know where the funds would be sourced from, but if that's not the will of the whole board, then I don't need to have it.
Good questions, Lynn?
Yeah, I'm actually going to support Kim on this, and that if you take money from Peter to rob, if you rob from Peter to pay Paul, Peter's losing out on something. So in this case, what is Peter losing out on? Where is the funds coming from? What is the impact on other budgets within our whole entire budget? What is the impact upon other departments? There has to be an impact on something. You don't, I mean, when you throw a stone into the brook, it casts a ripple. So I would be very interested in knowing, even though I fully support this, I would like to know what has to take a hit in order for this to occur.
Sure.
If there's a report that could come back to us,
Certainly.
that would be worthwhile to know, because got to find it somewhere.
I'd be happy.
So I
to do it.
fully support what
I can
Kim's
certainly get
asking.
together with Gail and outline a way forward on it. But as I say, I don't believe it'll be a problem to identify ways to fund this.
So I mean, and I'm not saying there is, but
Yeah.
at some point, we are responsible to taxpayers. And if we can't provide a fully budgeted item that was voted upon, we have to be able to answer for where that money came from. So
I'd be happy to report back to you in 2 weeks' time.
that would be fine for me. I don't know if Kim.
Just like, I appreciate that, Laney, and I think it's important also that like we as individual board members aren't directing the town manager. Does anyone object to asking the town manager to just indicate the source of the funds that will be used?
So are we asking to have the sources indicated and to table this item?
No,
for
I'm happy to
meeting?
support it.
I'm happy, and I have volunteered to come back to you in 2 weeks and
I'm
give you
fully
give you more
supportive.
meat on the bones.
I'm fully supportive of it. I just would like to know where it's coming from.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions or comments, or take a motion?
Okay, Mr. Chair. I move that effective July 1st, 2024, the town of Hartford pay the full amount of the Vermont Child Care Contribution Payroll Tax with no requirement that employees pay any portion of this tax.
Second.
We have a second from Sue. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I said aye. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks, man. Okay,
Follow up with you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Our next item is discussing the citizen petition seeking Gaza ceasefire resolution. So I believe there are some folks here who want to discuss that. My understanding as well is that you've asked that we not actually vote on this particular resolution this evening.
So hi, everyone. I'm Molly Armbrust.
Can you speak right into the microphone?
Yes.
Right into the-
Hi, everyone. I'm Molly Armbrust. I live in West Hartford. And yeah, I'm here with a few other folks to present and discuss the proposed Hartford ceasefire resolution. So this resolution was crafted and put forward by a dedicated group of Hartford residents. We feel it is important to take a stance on genocide and utilize all possible avenues to bring an end to the atrocities in Gaza. We hope that you, the select board, align with this goal and approve the resolution. However, tonight our goal is really to introduce and discuss the resolution. We would like to table the vote temporarily for a future meeting in June to allow for further discussion and education, community engagement, etc. So a few of us are contributing to tonight's presentation. So Laura is going to start us off by reading the full resolution, and then I guess just a note. We made a few slight changes since we originally submitted it, so you should have received an updated version last night, but I also have some physical copies here if that's helpful for anyone. So who would like that? Awesome. 3 of you, perfect. Okay, so I'll pass it off to Laura and then I will sum it up.
Thank you.
I think Patrick would like one too.
So the proposed resolution that we sent last night, and you, now those who asked for are getting copies of. Proposed resolution submitted to the town of Hartford, Vermont Select Board. Be it resolved that the town of Hartford Select Board, acting by democratic process and in collaboration with residents of the town of Hartford, and in consideration of similar resolutions statewide, nationwide, and internationally, calls for 1, an immediate ceasefire and return of all hostages and prisoners in Gaza, the West Bank, and elsewhere in occupied Palestine, in light of a vote by the majority of countries, 153 nations around the world, in favor of a ceasefire as part of the United Nations General Assembly resolution, and Israel's increasingly violent campaign against the Palestinian people, resulting in a genocide of over 34,945 Palestinians in Gaza, including over 14,500 children, more than 77,545 injured, and more than 8,000 missing under the rubble at time of writing. And 2, an immediate arms embargo on Israel, an end to U.S. weapons sales and military aid to Israel, in light of the federal tax dollars from Hartford residents yearly contributing to military aid packages, as well as the Israeli military's and the government's well-documented crimes against humanity, both historically and in the recent case against Israel presented by South Africa in the International Court of Justice. And 3, the federal government to restore all funding to UNRWA and other aid organizations immediately, and demand Israel allow desperately needed humanitarian aid to enter the Rafah border crossing without restriction. And 4, the Vermont state government to pass a resolution of its own to call for a ceasefire and arms embargo to Israel, and to urge President Biden and Congress to follow suit. And also 5, our congressional delegation, namely Congresswoman Becca Balint, Senator Bernie Sanders, and Senator Peter Welch, to pressure Israel to adhere to an immediate and permanent ceasefire and support an arms embargo on Israel. This resolution comes in the context of many like resolutions that have passed in towns and cities across Vermont and all of the United States. With this resolution, the board strongly condemns all forms of oppression, namely Islamophobia, anti-Palestinian racism, anti-Semitism, and recognizes that these forms of oppression, all of which have increased since Israel's enactment of genocide on the Palestinian people, are necessarily connected and operate together internationally and locally. By passing this resolution, the board acts upon calls made by residents of Hartford, many of whom have felt the effect of this war directly in their own communities, and joins the global effort to end the genocide of the Palestinian people. The text of this resolution will be sent to the offices of all state and federal congressional representatives beholden to the residents of the town of Hartford, Vermont, as well as the Vermont State House and the White House. Thank you.
Kelly Barbara, West Hartford. Can you speak as loud as you can, Kelly?
Yes, okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can, but there's another hand up, which I'm guessing is because of volume.
Yeah, we believe that calling for a ceasefire is absolutely town business. 1, the more communities that call for a ceasefire, the more likely our government is to listen. Our collective voice is more impactful than our individual voices. And there is precedent for this. Over 100 towns and cities across the country have adopted ceasefire resolutions. At this juncture, we must use all avenues available to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. 2, a portion of our federal tax dollars as citizens of Hartford are used to fund Israel's war on Gaza, which implicates Hartford residents in every war crime committed by the Israeli army. This makes it concretely local business. 3, our government's handling of this war on Gaza has contributed to a significant rise in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, as well as a significant rise in normalized anti-Palestinian racism throughout our country, including in Hartford and the rest of Vermont. One obvious example is the shooting of 3 Palestinian students in Burlington, which, while not in Hartford, is alarmingly close to home. It is the job of our government to stand up for their citizens and make sure we all feel safe in our homes and in our communities. 4, finally, the war in Gaza is destroying food and water supplies and contributing to climate change and instability in the region, which has an impact worldwide. Frankly, neutrality is not an option. I also have a statement from another Hartford resident on this topic, Bethany Fleischman. She said, Israel is this country's most important, or certainly one of our top 2 or 3 allies, and cumulatively, since its formation, Israel has received more US aid than any other country in the world. Israel relies on this country for funding its military. So the war in Gaza is an American issue and an American responsibility in part. And therefore, it's a town issue because as citizens, we must act locally in order to act globally. This is one way that citizens in Vermont and elsewhere are choosing to act, because these are tools at our disposal. Secondly, it's also a town issue because the situation in Gaza is so dire, so extreme, so reprehensible, that the whole world needs to be acting with force and immediacy to put an end to it in whatever way we can. Will a bunch of town resolutions help? Who knows? But we must try everything to pressure our leaders. It's our responsibility as Americans and as humans.
Kelly, someone asked, I think not everyone's stated their name and where they live.
I did, but maybe it was
Okay.
Kelly Armbrust, West Hartford.
Thank you.
And Bethany Fleischman is Hartford.
You want to go back or?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay.
Is this loud enough?
No, that's good.
Excellent. Lucy Danger, White River Junction. I am here to speak to you about some of the misconceptions about this issue that can come up when we're discussing it. I've often heard it said during my time with this work, and I've been working on this issue for over 6 years, that Palestinian solidarity activism or even asking for a ceasefire is anti-Semitic in some way. As a Jewish Hartford resident, it's really important to me that you know that this accusation is incongruous with the long tradition of Jewish solidarity and resistance in the face of oppression, and is often the product of misinformation on the difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is targeted institutional or personal attacks upon Jewish people. It is contextualized within the inextricable nature of most, if not all, forms of oppression. For example, white nationalist violence, which is on the rise in the US, targets Jewish people, Black people, and other people of color, Muslims, and other historically marginalized communities. Solidarity between those of us fighting against all of these forms of oppression makes us all stronger. I have been a member of Jewish Voice for Peace, a Jewish-led organization that works in solidarity with Palestine liberation movements for almost 7 years now, and my work in support of Palestine has always been strengthened by working in Jewish community. To quote Jewish Voice for Peace, attacking Jewish individuals or communal spaces for being Jewish or blaming the Jewish people for the actions of the Israeli government is anti-Semitic and unacceptable, and is flatly contrary to the values of our movement. Our movement is for justice in Palestine and stands firm as an anti-racist movement, which of course includes opposing all acts of anti-Semitism. In contrast, anti-Zionism opposes the political ideology of Zionism, which prioritizes the named existence of an Israeli ethno-state over the livelihood, safety, and culture of hundreds of thousands of indigenous Palestinians. There is no Jewish community for me in a country that offers exclusive full citizenship rights to certain individuals based on their religion, race, or nationality. Jewish people often reach for Zionism in response to the real threats to our safety around the world. But I believe that Jewish people deserve safety, community, and belonging everywhere in this world. I refuse the idea that I can only be safe as a Jew if I leave my home, everyone I know, and move to a country that will grant citizenship to me because of my religion, but will refuse the same right to Palestinian people who were expelled from their homeland and forced to become refugees elsewhere. My safety and rights are not predicated on the expulsion and genocide of another people. I refuse the idea that my religion is to be defined by the powers of another country that has had to stake its existence on the removal of another people. It is insulting to insinuate that because we support the liberation of Palestine, we cannot also be outraged by the killing of innocent Israeli civilians on October 7th. All of these struggles are connected. Anti-Semitism, anti-Palestinian racism, Islamophobia are all cut from the same cloth. The increases in these events have had a direct impact in our community. Addressing one does not distract or detract from another. In truth, incorrectly conflating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism harms work for collective liberation and justice, and this conflation itself is often a cover for anti-Semitism. This is why we see politicians and other individuals with platforms taking advantage of our movement for their own attempted political gain, attempting to define anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism while doing nothing to respond to actual instances of anti-Semitism in their communities. The agendas of war profiteers, white nationalists, and anti-Palestinian organizations and individuals does nothing to protect Jewish people, and often endangers those of us who speak up and support Palestinian liberation by threatening our safety and privacy. I grew up here in Hartford. I can count on one hand the number of Jewish students in every school I went to growing up. I stopped going to synagogue once I was old enough to have developed a political consciousness and came to understand that I would not be welcome there, the only Jewish community I had known to that point, if I was honest with my discomfort about their unquestioning support for every action the Israeli government took at any cost. It took me until college to find a robust community of anti-Zionist Jews to share ritual, discussion, and organizing work with. When I moved back here after I graduated, I found what I had been looking for growing up. My Jewish community is here in Hartford with those who join me in resisting oppression and genocide. My Jewish community is diverse and loving, and we recognize the fact that these attacks do not make anyone safer. It could not be clearer to me that this topic is town business. It is affecting town residents, and I want to be part of a town whose residents are engaged with this dialogue about such issues, and whose elected officials have no hesitation when condemning genocide. Board members and everyone listening tonight, I ask you to consider your personhood and what you are saying about Hartford when you discuss and think about this resolution. There is no neutrality. We cannot separate this issue from others that are important to our community. Genocide is everyone's business, and any suggestion that it is not comes from a narrow-minded and dangerous ideology. The metaphors to past historical genocides and atrocities have been made aptly, and they are not an exaggeration. This genocide will end. Israeli apartheid will end. It has been so normalized for so long that we have learned to ignore what is being done with our tax dollars across the world, in front of the world. Israeli forces are killing children in cold blood with no accountability. They are wiping off the world entire families with PR as the only cover. Any backlash we as Americans might face for speaking up is incomparable when we look at what is being done with our tax dollars as the world watches. If you support human rights, if you want to stand against these atrocities, this is your opportunity, locally and globally. Thank you.
That's the end of our organizers' presentation.
That's the end of the organizer's presentation. We'll take a comment, and the select board has questions or comments for the organizers. We can follow up with those. So please go ahead.
I'm just here as myself.
Your name, sir? Your name?
If you could identify yourself just for the record.
Good.
Yeah, he's good.
Can I speak?
Good.
I'm Earl Hatley.
Okay.
I'm an enrolled citizen of the Missisquoi Band, Abenaki Nation, with Shawnee and Cherokee heritage. I'm speaking as an Indigenous person tonight. I want to call out this conflict. I see this as part of the symptom of colonization when we see the Palestinian and the Israeli conflict. I see this as part of what has happened with our people. My father's family, for example, originally from Alabama, forcibly removed to Arkansas in the early removal of the 1800s. And then they attempted to remove us again. My mother's peoples, the Benaki, and eugenics and all of what she had to go through and her families had to go through. I've seen what the colonizers have done to our peoples. I'm looking at this conflict and I'm seeing, the Israelis and the Palestinians and this colonizer approach that is happening there. Where did they learn this? They learned it from the British, from the United States, from the EU colonizers. This is what is happening there. And what is it about? It's about oil. I have been fighting climate change all my adult life since 1973 when I first learned about the climate problem. in my Vision Quest, creator showed me this time that we're in right now. And this is why I'm here. I've been fighting climate change all this time. The whole problem in the Middle East in this situation with this conflict is about oil. We support the Israelis, the EU supports the Israelis. They have been the forefront of protecting the Strait of Hormuz, the Suez Canal, all of these areas for the flow of oil. You have the Iranians supporting Hamas. You have all of this going on. It's all the conflict about oil at a time when climate is running out of control. And look at all that we're doing to try to solve the climate problem. Yet we're pouring all of these munitions and all of this money into that conflict. Same with Ukraine. That is about natural gas pipelines from Russia to the EU. And the United States is now the #1 exporter of natural gas because of that conflict. We are becoming the #1 exporter of oil because of all of these conflicts at a time when we're supposed to be stopping our development of fossil fuels to prevent the coming climate crisis. We're in the climate crisis. Why is the United States the #1 exporter of fossil fuels? By 2030, we'll be doubling the amount of fossil fuels production that we have right now today. We are doubling our production of fossil fuels at a time when we're supposed to be stopping our production of fossil fuels. And this is what this conflict is all about: oil, the flow of oil, and our right to take the oil from the Middle East to provide everybody our own oil. This is what these conflicts are about. When is it going to stop? When are we going to stop killing over oil? And so follow the money. Follow the money when you're looking at these conflicts. And so, all of this colonization, all of this is merely about that. And so it's time to stop. It's time to stop the hate, the greed, the fighting, the killing. And it's time to solve our problems and to do them right. And so all we have to do is just stop. And so we're asking, since we can't get the Biden administration to stop, we're starting with the grassroots. We're asking you, help us stop this. Just say stop. We demand it stop. Stop the killing, stop the hate, stop the greed. Stop it here. All of the towns, all of the state, stop. And then perhaps the Biden administration will finally get the idea. That's what we're asking. See you, Levy.
Questions from the board or comments for the presenters? Okay, we'll start with the board. Oh, Brandon. Okay, Brandon, we can hear from you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Vice Chair. I'd just like to read two things. One is an excerpt from the town charter. It's section 203 2D. And it says, the select board shall determine its own rules and orders of business not addressed by this chapter. Many take that to refer, in part at least, to the kind of proclamation that our board sometimes makes. And actually, that was a reference that we got in one of our comments. This group that's doing the organizing submitted us some comments. I haven't been able to reach the resident who made one particular comment, so I won't use their name, but I'd like to read the comment they submitted to the board. They said, I am aware that the select board is generally wise to make a practice of avoiding political and foreign policy topics which are outside of its jurisdiction. And they go on, they say, I believe that despite the potentially negative consequences, the select board has a moral obligation to the town of Hartford to speak up at this junction. To do otherwise and to stand by without using the voice which is given to it by means of the time-honored tradition of the select board proclamation, this would ultimately be demoralizing to the town, as the full scope of the moral consequences of the genocide being perpetrated on the Palestinian people comes fully into view. That's the comment I'd like to make today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other select board comments or questions?
Sure, I just want to say thank you to the organizers for your work. I really am honored and proud to have organizers like you in my community, and thank you for sharing your information with us tonight.
Thank you, Anna. Kim?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot and talking to a lot of people, and there's kind of a couple layers for me. Like, as an individual resident of this town, I will be at that podium and absolutely supporting the resolution that was proposed. As a representative of all of the members of the town, I feel an obligation to consider a couple things, see if the board has any appetite to have a very simple, establish a very simple policy for which determines if, when and how the board will entertain a resolution proposal from any third party group coming to the town, so that we can kind of just establish some equitable framework for how this process works. I mean, personally, again, I'm happy to like entertain any resolution one by one that comes before the board, but I think if we are not just kind of doing things by the seat of our pants, I think that's always recommended. So that would be one thing. I'm curious to see how the rest of the board feels about a very simple policy. And then number two, having, I think I shared just this afternoon with the board, the language that the Lebanon and Hanover select boards adopted in the resolutions that they have adopted, I felt a little more comfortable with in terms of being a little more moderate, even though I realize that this is a really important and that it's not a moderate situation we're talking about, but in light of the fact that this is really primarily symbolic in some ways, I do think that I agree that there are, and Peter Welch has said to me, the only way that things can happen is if they start locally, so that if there are individual citizens that are coming to us to be a voice for them, and then we are sharing that voice and just putting it up the channel, I think that's a role that we can play that is part within our responsibility. I guess I'll leave it at that. See if anyone.
Thoughts? Sue?
Too many thoughts on this. And I really appreciate Earl bringing in all the other layers that are wrapped around this thing and stating it so succinctly. Thank you for taking your time to do that for us. And I'm trying to remember your name in the back. You're
Lucy.
right there, who I don't know, Lucy.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing perspective. And I can't remember when I spent more time being upset about something since the middle of October when this started, and feeling completely incapable of doing anything about it. So my hat is off to all of you, and I actually barged in on one family earlier this week to say, we need to talk this through. We need to figure out how to do this right. And I appreciate them letting me do that. And I want this to be bigger than this 7 people here. And I am hearing from people who really don't think it's appropriate for this group to do this. And I don't know how to resolve these things within myself, within my head, within this room. So I'm just trying to give you what I've been thinking about this. Number one thing keeping me up at 3 in the morning has been this horror show that's going on over there. So this is not helpful to getting us where we need to go, but I do want us to keep talking about it. Anybody who wants to barge into my house, please do so. Because this really needs to get figured out. And as Earl pointed out to me, what do I think I'm waiting for? So thank you, my friend, for that.
Sue Lynn?
Yeah, I guess I don't disagree at all about the need to end the conflict between Israel and Palestine. But I have to ask the question of where do we stop as a board in calling out things? You know, we have the Rohingya genocide, Iraq-men genocide, Yazidi genocide, Darfur, Fasser le Tableau, massacres of Hutus, Rwandan genocide, Bosnian genocide. In America, the genocide that we have upon our Native American people, you know, I mean, what is this? These are all genocides that are taking place around the world, and they're all terrible. I mean, we killed our own Native American people by giving them tainted blankets, for goodness sakes, which was despicable of us as Americans. Okay. And it was all wrong, every bit of it. But for you to ask 7 members of our community to right all the wrongs that are happening around the world or denounce all this stuff, where do we stand and say, this is wrong, this is wrong? You know, what's happening over to, you know, Palestine and Israel is wrong. You know, all the bloodshed's wrong. I wish they could come to peace. But we as a 7-member board, we can't control what happens in Israel. We can't control what happens in Palestine. I mean, you have government entities that can't control what happens over in Israel and happens in Palestine. Has been seen, you know. This is a topic I think that just is not within the purview of us to be able to do anything about. You have every right, as I do, to speak out against these genocides that have happened, and we should. But I just have to ask, where does it all end at? You know, because there's genocide everywhere in the world today. And for us to just say this genocide against the Palestinian people that you're wanting us to say is wrong, we can't just do that. And if we can't just do that, where do we take up all of our board's time to call out all the genocides happening in the world today? That's why I don't think that this is an issue that is Hartford related that should come before this board, because we are charged with doing so much more for the individual members of our community that we're not doing, you know. And here we're taking up time about something that's happening across the pond from us that your family may still have family in Israel. And I don't know that if you do or not, but if you do, I mean, that's one thing, but that's a personal thing. And we as a town, we can't control that. It's not beyond, it's not behooving upon us to get involved with this.
thank you, Lanny. If someone, seems like we have some people headed up to the microphone.
Hi, Bridget
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bridget Armbrust, West Hartford. I'm also part of the organizing group, but I didn't present. But yeah, I want to address some of that. I hear what you're saying, Lanny, about like, there's a lot of awful things that happen in the world, and yes, like it's overwhelming to think about, you know, taking time to have resolutions on all of them. Like I understand that. I think where this one feels different from a lot of the other things that are happening in the world is U.S. funding, U.S. taxpayer funding. Specifically, first of all, like Israel receives a lot more money from the U.S. than basically any other entity in the world that is, you know, committing similar war crimes. And particularly since October, we've been adding significantly to the just like baseline amount of money that we sent to Israel. So there is, I would say, a much more direct, like residents, I would argue that because of this tax money, American taxpayers are pretty directly implicated in these war crimes. And as American taxpayers, that means us. So I would say that this is a little bit more personal than a lot of the other things that are happening in the world. And then as far as like this 7-member board not having power, I don't think that's necessarily true. Like, I'm not saying that y'all by yourselves can do something, but you're not the only board in this country that has had a resolution like this come before you. There have been over 100 cities and towns in the US that have passed similar resolutions. And I think the point of resolutions like this is that they don't exist in isolation. It's that they are a collective movement that can potentially signal to our national government that this is something that is important to Americans across the country, to taxpayers across the country, that we feel that this is an inappropriate use of our tax dollars. And as far as like speaking to like you all as like 7 people in this town as opposed to like the whole town doing this, I get that. I get that that's hard, but at the same time, that is the nature of representative democracy, right? Like we elected you to represent us. This is something that, you know, I feel that like I would like my representatives to make a statement on. I would like my representatives to, you know, represent me to the national government in this way. So I think, yeah, that's my position on that. I think that's because we don't necessarily have a forum in the town right now that I know of, for there to be like a wider like official thing that happens. Like this is the forum we have, and we elected you to do this, and I'd like to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Molly Armbrust again. I don't know that I have much to say after that, because I think that pretty much encapsulated a lot of what I was thinking, but I just want to come back to this idea that I think we are all so aware that the Hartford Selectboard passing this, you know, resolution on its own is not going to do something. And I want to come back to this idea of like using all available avenues. I don't think we can stand with ourselves as individuals or as a town to do nothing. And this is the avenue that is available to us. So I do believe it can be part of the change. The more towns that do this, the stronger message it sends to national government, because it is so much of a Hartford issue and of a US issue. And also I would just say a human issue. Genocide is everyone's issue. So I don't need to go on, but I think I just really wanted to reiterate those points.
Thank you.
Laura Simon, Wilder, Vermont. A very quick statement. As you talk about the pressure being on all of you and you're only 7, I just wanted you all to know that in the 10 days, the 7 of us put an hour or 2 a day into collecting signatures. We collected 190. We'd like to be able to present you with 500, and we think that will happen. Also, we are going to probably put on a little workshop here in town just to continue discussion and education, and we'd like to invite you all, but that's on our list to do. We'll see how it comes together. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Hi again. I want to respond first to something that Sue brought up. You spoke about feeling like you were searching for something to do and feeling helpless, and I share that. I even standing here tonight, I feel helpless and like I'm not doing anything, and that's why I'm here, I suppose. I think for me personally, one of the most impactful impacts of this process has been the conversations I've had with individual residents, collecting signatures and gathering input and letting people know that this resolution is on the docket and that it's something that residents are concerned about. I've heard from a lot of people who have said, I don't really know where to start on this issue. I feel like I need to read up, but I don't know what sources are the best to look at, or I've been meaning to look into it and I would love to have a conversation. And I'm an educator and that is my jam. Like, I am so happy to have those conversations. And if anyone else is feeling like they want to do something, I really encourage you to look at Upper Valley for Palestine. We've been hosting a lot of events and political education workshops around the Upper Valley, and we plan to bring more of that here to have a more sort of direct and efficient forum to have those conversations, in addition to one-on-one chats outside the co-op. I also wanted to respond to something that Laney said, just to clarify, I don't have any family in Israel. I have no connection to Israel, actually, other than being Jewish and people assuming that I have a connection to Israel because I'm Jewish, which I find troubling. That is difficult for me to hear, because it assumes that I have some kind of relationship with Israel or connection that I don't, just because I'm Jewish, and I'm not sure why that assumption is made. But as a Jewish person with no connection to Israel, this issue is really important to me, and I don't want any of these issues or any of these acts that are happening doing so in my name as a Jewish person, with or without a connection to Israel. I also want to respond to what you said, Lanny, about where does the board stop? I would say that's your decision. You have the power to make any statements that you would like about things that you find reprehensible as a board. And I would encourage you to look into all of the issues that you listed and to think about what your role as a board might be. It might not be making a statement, because there might not be, a global campaign to educate people and, boycott and divest and sanction Israel and, related entities, because that is the strategy that the Palestine Liberation Movement is moving forward with. That's not the strategy that every movement works with. There are other atrocities happening that I believe deserve our attention and should have our attention as a country, as a town, and as individuals. And I think the what's the word? Elephant in the room is that we're standing and sitting right now on Abenaki land, and that an action on that issue, instead of, espousing a resolution, might be talking to community members and redistributing power and wealth to those wronged people. So all of those issues do deserve attention. We're bringing this to you because it is the strategy that has been collectively organized by Palestine Solidarity Movement workers. And I encourage you to continue educating yourselves as individuals and elected representatives on all of those issues as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Two members of the public plus Brandon.
Let's hear from Brandon and then from the two members of the public on Zoom. Brandon, go ahead.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to make a very quick comment about the data of the signatures that they're gathering, sort of like what that data seems to represent. It seems like some other board members here that, if I'm hearing correctly, kind of want or seem to want some better data about like how many of our citizens or what percentage of our citizens support kind of calling for ceasefire, right? And the strategy that I've heard that these organizers are using to petition their signatures on their petition is to just stand outside the food co-op and ask people, hey, would you support a ceasefire? And if so, would you sign this thing saying you do? To me, you don't really get a much more representative sample or sort of randomized sample other than sort of like people, if you have like an actual research, institution and make phone calls, but otherwise it's just like everyone needs groceries, right? So like, let's say they get 350 signatures by the next time by the time they want to ask for a vote. Let's say they get 400 or 500. It almost doesn't matter that much. Like, let's say they get 400 signatures. As a percentage of the residents in the town, that's 3.6%. And in many cases, like if that is properly scientifically randomized, I think in many cases that is a representative sample. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Brandon?
I can chime in on that.
Yeah, Kim, you can chime in, then let's hear from the folks on Zoom.
Okay, because Brandon, I appreciate that, but I think there's a flaw in that logic a little bit, because I know people who signed the petition outside the co-op who do support ceasefire in Gaza, but did not read the language of the resolution. And I think, and I know people specifically, anyway, like I think it is a great representation. I would be curious to know if there was any way to tell, and I don't think there is, how many people who signed the petition actually read the resolution that was proposed and presented. So like, for example, I have not signed the petition because I am like supportive of different language of a resolution. So I just wanted to kind of like clarify that point of showing solidarity and support for the town to do a resolution is great without people necessarily getting specifically into the semantics of the document.
Let's hear from the folks on Zoom that have been waiting fairly patiently.
Yeah, and Joyce has been waiting for quite a while. Go ahead again, Joyce.
Yes, Kim, I fully agree with the idea of the putting in a process or a procedure. That is my biggest thing that I wanted to just chime in about, is I don't know that even have enough information to do anything, but we've really been working really hard in developing policies and procedures and structure that guide us. And that's basically just what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Yeah, another hand.
Yeah, and then we have Tim O'Hara. Please.
Tim, can you hear us? Tim?
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, go ahead whenever you're ready, Tim.
We can't hear you if you're talking.
Can you see if he's muted?
He's unmuted.
Tim, we're gonna come back to you. So we can't seem to hear you. I don't know.
But we just put his hand down.
He put his hand down, okay. If you want to, you can put your hand back up if you want to try and comment again. We just weren't getting any audio on your end, and I think maybe Laura, you had I don't know if you wanted to follow up. I saw your hand.
I just wanted to respond to Kim. I'm Laura Simon Wilder. 100% of those who signed the petition were given the opportunity to read it.
Absolutely.
I didn't bring my little flyer, but we gave them a flyer and explained, you can read it here and you can sign it there. So, and I said, and I have it right here if you'd like to read it.
Yeah, there was no question about the opportunity. I appreciate that.
I guess one question that I had that's kind of come up, and when you sometimes, there is a process. You're not really asking us right now about putting something to a townwide vote.
You just put his hand back up. You want to try it?
Let me just finish.
Okay.
Sorry, I started, right? A lot of the times you see people gather signatures for something which is like a ballot petition, right? Like you get 5% of the town's registered voters. And in some specific statutory instances, you can put stuff on the ballot without even the select board, like weighing in on it, certain appropriations, things like that. And so when people talk about signatures and stuff and those things, sometimes they're thinking that what you're really asking for is a question like this to be put on the ballot. I know that's not what's before us. It's sort of a yes or no on the resolution. But I wasn't aware if there was any thought about whether you were going to request that we put something on a townwide ballot, or if it's just to weigh in on the resolution. I just wanted to get some clarity, because sometimes when people hear ballot signatures, things like that, they're thinking about something that might go on a ballot.
Want me to respond now or?
Yeah, I mean, sure, if you.
He put his hand back down again.
Okay, we'll get to Tim.
Bridget again. In this case, no, we're not looking to put anything on the ballot. This is more of just a sort of like informal gauge of support within the town, since that was something that was expressed to us as a concern from members of the board, but it's not like formal.
Gotcha. Okay, so the signatures are more just a representation of support. They're not intended to hit like the 5% of registered voters. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Molly, and I was just gonna add that was, like, I spent some time collecting signatures, and that was pretty clearly communicated to people.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We were clear that this was sort of to show support so that the board was informed of making a decision. It wasn't for anything for a ballot. So just to be clear on that.
Gotcha, okay. Zoom, is Tim back on?
No hands up at the moment. Tim, if you wanna chime in, just put your hand back up again. Oh, there it goes.
Okay,
Let's give it a try.
we'll hear from Tim.
Right, you can hear.
Maybe you'll hear from me. I'm not sure if my connection is going to be good enough for you. Is that working or not?
Yes, it is.
You can. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to express my support for this ceasefire resolution and my gratitude to the board for giving it consideration, and also to partly address some of the sentiments that Lanny was expressing that I think a lot of people feel why this particular crisis and not others. And twofold. One, to say this is something that's an ongoing, it has a level of urgency and emergency that a number of the conflicts that Lanny talked about don't have, and a level of U.S. complicity in the atrocities that are ongoing in Gaza, where it's my feeling that as a citizen of this country that there's a moral imperative to speaking out against this level of atrocities that's done in our name. You know, every munition in Gaza is an American munition. Every veto at the Security Council is an American veto to protect Israel from accountability. And I feel the moral imperative is twofold, in that the people who are the victims of these atrocities are stateless people who have no political rights. And it's incumbent on us as citizens in a democracy to use our voice when we see these kind of things being perpetrated in our name. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Kelly, do you
Back to the signatures, and just, it seemed like it would be important to just give you a sense of a level of community support.
Sure.
And then someone also pointed out to me that you can also, this is not, official, but you can also look, it's important to look at public opinion polls too, like that you can assume probably that what the public opinion polls are gathering in our country also would apply to Hartford. And I think there was one in March, a Gallup poll that showed that 55% of people thought there should be a ceasefire, 36 were against it, and maybe 9 were undecided, something like that. And there's a lot of that kind of information out there, and I know that's not Hartford specific, but I think it's also just helps fill in some of, I think sentiment, generally speaking, is in favor of ceasefire.
Yeah. So also, before we kind of wrap this up, my understanding is, you've asked that we take a vote on this at the next regular scheduled meeting, which would be the 11th of June. Okay. And it sounded like in the meantime, you were going to make some more outreach efforts or do things like that. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that correctly.
Yes, that's basically true. also if you know, a policy on resolutions is something that the board ends up like deciding is something they want to move forward with, we would be open to like potentially withdrawing this and resubmitting through that channel if that is something that happens. Actually not something that I feel like we have a huge stake in, but we're interested in cooperating if that is the direction the board moves in. And then also just I think Kim expressed some concerns about language, and like I think if we are going to, you know, consider addressing that, like I don't know if this happen now, but at some point we would need a like specific list of those concerns.
Thank you. Yeah.
Molly again. I was just gonna throw in, and I think I kind of got to that at the end. Part of this process is also to consider your feedback as a board. Since it's something that we're asking you to approve, so there needs to be some sort of back and forth on that. So that's just to clarify, that is also part of the extension.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
I mean, I guess I would like to just respond to that and share with the board, like, if the language were more in line with the language that Lebanon or Hanover or some combination there was before me, ideally with a policy in place that I think could be put together pretty quickly, possibly even at our June 4th special meeting, then that's something that I feel like I could support.
Thank you, Ken. Sue?
I'm just concerned about the June 4th meeting, because I don't think I can be there. And I don't want to rush this.
Yeah. If we were to share a draft policy with the board and one by one get some feedback that we could maybe then wrap up on the 4th, would that be reasonable?
I'll just point out, I'm not gonna be here the rest of this week.
Yeah.
And the
Right.
Monday is the 3rd already.
Yeah.
And
And
before
I'm in
things-
the woods for 4 days.
Yeah.
And I don't want to talk to anybody about anything.
Well, I mean, you know, they've asked us to table this vote till the 11th. They may be okay with us tabling this vote until the next meeting afterwards, which would be the 25th. Maybe, maybe not.
I mean, I guess how does the board feel about a policy? Do you want one? Do you not want one?
I'm fine with it. I'm willing to help craft a draft with you. I would like to work with you on it, if you can.
Just for the record, I feel like this came to us like a lot of things come to us with citizens just reaching out to something that they want us to take up on the agenda. The content is different from when people come in and ask us to change a speed limit or make an appropriation, but I think it's the same idea. So I don't think we necessarily need a special policy for resolutions. You know, I'm not necessarily like totally opposed to one, but at the same time, I think, you know, these citizens reached out to us, we put something on the agenda, they had, you know, they obviously prepared very well for it. You know, so I don't know that we necessarily need a separate agenda just for resolutions. I don't see these coming up too much, but that's just a thought. But certainly if we have a majority of support for a policy like that on the board, I'll do what I can. I will put my thoughts in, at least as it gets crafted. Sue?
I have heard unhappiness with this, and I expect after this meeting, I will hear more, and I'm probably not the only one. So I'm just saying, we're gonna have to balance all of the positions in the town. So 2 weeks doesn't seem like a long time to me for us to be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I feel similar to Mike, that I'm not adamant that there should be a special policy because, you know, citizens are allowed to bring issues to our concern and propose that we make motions to approve something that they want to happen. But again, in order to grease the wheels, oh, so sorry, oh no. Sorry, clumsiness.
No less going with pen.
Okay. And the resolution. Anyways, I'm open to helping with it if that would be amenable. You know, obviously I respect your views and wanting to have sort of a equitable playing field for this as we've done in other situations as well. And the other thing is like, I don't know, you know, we're gonna vote as a board. We're gonna represent the folks who we want to prioritize in our vote when we vote, and it will pass or it won't, is sort of my view on that. Yeah.
I think that's correct. Those are the options. Yes.
Brandon has his hand up.
Okay.
And so is Mike Morris.
Okay.
Gonna go Brandon first?
Yeah, let's go to Brandon first and then Mike, and then I think we'll probably wrap it up.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to voice that my opinion on this is tracking a little closer to Mike's, where I feel like there is a check already, a system of checks already that we use to kind of vet, you know, if someone were to, Joe Schmo were to bring us a resolution that said some kind of like some, not just wild and crazy stuff, but like stuff that's objectionable to some folks, right? But not to others. So like that's what we as a board have to weigh. And that check system is, do we get a motion? Do we get a second? And then what does the whole board vote on it? That has served the board well enough so far. Not to say I'm against policies for this kind of thing, but in this case, I would almost think that we could move forward without one, and then sort of like get into the like nitty gritty of like, well, if we were to make a policy about this, like, let's do it right, and you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Lanny, and then we'll hear from Mike on Zoom.
What I look at when I look at this is that you got 150 people that are signing this thing so far.
190.
190. So okay. So 190. Wait a minute. Let's do the math real quick here. So it's about 1.9% of the population of the town of Hartford that's weighed in on this thing so far. And we're going to pass a resolution for the whole town based on 1.9% of the occupation of the town of Hartford. I mean, when you have, let's face it, and we all know this to be true, when you have something that's an issue like this, you have the most vocal group of people, which is a small minority, and they have a loud voice come forward to petition for their ideas or their thoughts. And this is what this group is it's a small majority right now, or small minority of the town of Hartford that we have before us. If we're going to pass a resolution for the town of Hartford, I want it to be based on more than 2% of the population of the town of Hartford. And I also question the fact of, I mean, we were collecting, they were there, I shouldn't say we, because I didn't collect any. They collected online signatures for this. How do we verify that these signatures were, people for the town of Hartford? I mean, how do we verify that they're,
Well, I mean, the verification is important if they wanted to get 5% and ask us to put it on the ballot. They don't want that. They just want us to vote yes or no on the resolution. So I think it's just an indication more generally of, the people who support it.
I can't feel comfortable with, less than 2% of the people in Hartford coming before us.
Kim, now let's hear from Mike Morris.
The signatures are superfluous. They are in addition to, like, it could be just one person or 5 people coming and asking, and we still need to be a representative government. Like, so we are, the 7 of us are tasked with making decisions based on what we think the majority of the residents and the voters of Hartford would want. Whether there's 1,000 signatures or 190, they said they're still working on more. That was like a show of support. They're basically just like adding to what's coming to the room. They're saying, if you don't want to go sit at a 3-hour meeting, you're not coming. They're not saying that, I'm sure, but basically just saying, like, do you support this in an informal way? It is not, and like Mike said, if they want to get it on the ballot, then those signatures need to be checked and verified that they're registered voters in the town of Hartford. But in this case, it is an informal, just additional layer of indicating support.
Okay, let's hear from Mike Morris.
Okay. And then there's just another hand up too. Go ahead, Mike.
Hello, can you hear me all?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Mike Morris, Hartford, Vermont. Listening about this resolution and hearing everybody talk about it reminded me of back when we had questions about Columbus Day and changed it to Indigenous Peoples Day. And at that time, I think I was saying that the majority of the people should make that decision, not that burden should not be put on the 7 members of the board. They weren't elected to change the holiday's name, just as you weren't elected to, do anything about what's going on with all this terrible things in Gaza and everything. But I really think that they should be going to the state with this, local representatives that work in this Montpelier, and then from there it can go to DC. But I really feel you're not being fair to the majority of the people in the town or yourselves if you do anything with this without at least at minimum going on a ballot to be fair with everybody. And I hope you lean that way in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of quick things, just for whatever it's worth. We did ask on the online signature form what town people reside in, and we removed, I think it was 4 people total who misread something or didn't read closely enough and lived in, Pomfret or Hanover or something. And so we removed those. Those do not count in the number of that we gave you, 190. Again, we're continuing to collect signatures in an informal way. And with the discussion of putting it on the ballot, I just want to reiterate the issue that the primary issue here is genocide. And I really encourage the board not to let this become mired in bureaucracy, because I'm sure you're all very familiar with frustration of feeling like you want something to move faster than it is. The idea that this would still be something of issue to vote on in November is egregious. And that's why we're asking you to make this decision on behalf of the town of Hartford as elected representatives.
They weren't hired. Yeah.
Thank you. I think there's another one more hand.
Go ahead, Corinna. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. If you could just identify yourself, please.
Yep, I'm Karina Gressett. I'm in West Hartford, Vermont. That's where I live. I am in support of this ceasefire resolution and just had a few things to say. I'd love to know the percent of the town that actually voted in the last election, and then think about that percentage versus the percentage of people who have signed this. Just if you think that 1.9% is really low, then what percent of the town actually elected everyone on the select board? Another thought that I had was like the 190 signatures might be considered low. They might be considered, too low of a percent to count. But I'm not really sure how many people have been contacting the select board in opposition to this ceasefire resolution, and taken into consideration with the voices that you've heard tonight, sort of how that balances out, because it is, as Kim said, a representative democracy. And I did not vote for Kim or Brendan or anyone else really based on their ability to get a stop sign put up in town, so much as the political stance that y'all are taking. So if I voted for Brandon, it was not because I think that he's going to be able to put new trees in town or make the bridge build go faster, so much as that I am trusting my elected representatives with the political stance that they've already taken and hoping that they will represent my wishes in accordance with the politics that I have elected them on. And I would also like to say, as Lucy said, the thought that this could be something that we are still debating, thinking about putting on the ballot in November is reprehensible. This is a genocide. This is why we are here. We're not here about a stop sign. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'd like to thank everyone who came out and spoke tonight and told us all about your efforts and answered our questions and made comments. And so I appreciate that very much. And that you've asked that we take this back up on the 11th of June. So we will consider that. So thank you everyone for coming in. Okay, we're going to go to commission reports next. Kim, do you have any?
I do not.
Okay, Brandon, do you have any commission reports?
I do not.
Mary?
No.
I don't.
I do. Okay, the tree board is working on with a landscape architect to plant some tree plantings at Lyman Park. Resilient Hartford is continuing work on the Abenaki Garden and Food Forest in Clifford Park, and they're focused on recruiting new members because they're down to 4, which is the minimum they need for a quorum. So they will be recruiting, and they'll have a presence at the Hartford Community Coalition Block Party on June 19th. And the Energy Commission is also going to be at the Hartford Community Coalition Block Party. They're going to have an interactive station, which is cool. I tried it at one of their other events where you ride a stationary bike and see how much energy it takes to power different kinds of light bulbs. So that will be fun. And then they're also working with a student at the Center for Cartoon Studies to do an illustration. They appropriated some funds to pay a student to illustrate a brochure about their commission's work. So that was a creative effort as well. And that's it.
Thank you, Etta. Sue? Lanny, anything?
No, unfortunately, no.
I don't have anything. So we'll move to the consent agenda. One question, do we need to mention the 6-4 meeting in the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay, so like on select board meetings approval, we'll
Yes.
throw in 6-4 with the 6-11 and 25.
Oh, I had one quick
Okay.
question. I think I asked you this, Brandon, but there was something in the minutes from last time, the Abundant Sun, like the present funding that we approved for the presentation that we heard tonight. It said that you abstained for that. I just wanted to make sure that that was right.
That was correct. That's a correct record of what happened during that meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. I will take a motion, Mary.
Sure. I move the select board approve payroll ending 5/25/2024, approve AP manifest of 5/24/24 plus 5/30/24, approve meeting minutes of 5/14/24 and corrected minutes of November 14th, 2023. Select board meetings approval 6/4/24, 6/11/2024, and 6/25/24.
Okay, we have a second.
I'll second.
We have a second from Kim. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
You said aye.
Yes.
I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Kim
Wait.
moves at
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mary. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.
Signature pages here for anybody who hasn't gotten to it yet.